Campaign 2022, welcome to the conversation. I'm David Schuster. If you were to drive from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, about halfway there, if you took a stop, you would be in California's 23rd congressional district. This is a relatively new carve-out district because of redistricting, but it's a fascinating district nonetheless, known as the High Desert. And there's a pretty good general election matchup that is taking shape. And here to join us now is Derek Marshall. He won the Democratic primary the other week. He is a openly gay, progressive community organizer. He has also been something of a community activist. And Derek joins us now. First of all, congratulations on your victory last week.
Awesome, thanks so much, David. Really happy to be on here.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about your general election opponent and about this new district.
Yeah, absolutely. So my opponent in the race, we actually had two. We went up against a city council woman, Blanca Gomez, and then we also went up against the big bad Republican in the race, Jay Obernolte. And the new 23rd congressional district is it's a doozy. It's huge. We have got the Victor Valley, so Victorville, Hesperia, Apple Valley. There's about 400,000 people there. If you hop in the car, you can head up the hill to Big Bear, Lake Arrowhead. If you go down the hill, we've got Joshua Tree and we've got Yucca Valley. And then if you go further down the hill, we've actually got a piece of South Redlands and Loma Linda. So it's absolutely huge. We've got a really unique race on our hands. It's a progressive Democratic candidate going up against a Trump-backed Republican. In fact, Trump actually endorsed my opponent Jay Obernolte on the last day of the election, and so we've got a dogfight on our hands that I think is pretty unique.
And for people who don't know, the top two finishers in the primary, whether they're the same party or different parties, they go on to the general election. So Obernolte and you will battle it out in November. A big chunk of this district used to be represented under the old map by Kevin McCarthy, who was the top Republican in the US House. So how does somebody who is progressive try to make inroads in a district like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, the good thing for us is that the new 23rd congressional district is completely different from the old 23rd congressional district. And so what that means is that the district, we used to be California 8, and so we now have a new number. But the question that stands is how are we going to be able to defeat a Trump-backed Republican as a progressive? And I think that the answer to that, and part of the reason I think why I'm on the show today, and what a lot of listeners and organizers and activists and folks from the progressive movement sort of agree, is that this is our opportunity to prove really what we've been preaching for a while, which is that we are probably of any of the Democrats best able to flip some of these districts, particularly in the rural and ex-urban areas. And the reason for that is that there is a lot of frustration. We're frustrated on this campaign because of a lot of the broken promises that we see in Congress. And I think that we're probably in agreement here that a lot of the reasons for these broken promises is because, as nice as a candidate may be, as amenable as we think that they are, at the end of the day, if you're accepting corporate donations, if you're accepting corporate PAC money, then you're going to be in the back pocket of the corporations. And I think that our campaign has such strong legs right now because we've been able to effectively communicate that message to voters out here.
Yeah, certainly Obernolte is in the, you could argue, is in the back pockets of his corporate donors. You're not taking any corporate PAC money. So and the contrast is clear on so many issues between a Trump-backed candidate and a progressive. What, in your estimation, is I mean, and I know there's a lot of polling that progressives have done in this sort of election cycle to try to figure out what are some of the issues that really sort of resonate and cut through, because there are so many. What are you prioritizing?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the key and core progressive priorities. So Medicare for all. We were reading a study yesterday that there's an estimated 330,000 Americans that would still be alive today if we had passed a Medicare for all system. We would have saved $104 billion. So Medicare for all is huge. Jobs, local jobs through a community jobs guarantee like the Green New Deal is something that would definitely benefit the district. We have over 90,000 people that leave the high desert every single day on 3-hour round trip commutes to work. The median income is $24,000. We need a Green New Deal, particularly the community jobs guarantee component of it, because it means jobs for the high desert. Education, universal pre-K, the list goes on. There's so many bread and butter, help your kitchen table budget policies that we can support. And again, because we are not bought and paid for by big corporations, we're able to unabashedly advocate for these types of policies, whereas my opponent, who's right in the back pocket of big pharma, the oil lobbyists and oil and gas companies, is just not going to fight for that. And when we take a look at his record, voting against the CARES Act, voting against any type of policy that would benefit marginalized and working people, the results are pretty clear.
You worked for the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2020. You were a staffer. There's a little bit of news with Bernie Sanders, and that it seems like he has let it be known to some of his staff that he is open to running again in 2024 if President Biden decides not to run for re-election. And the number of Democrats who are looking at a contingency plan, Bernie Sanders has made it very clear he expects Joe Biden to run. He will support Joe Biden, but if Biden does not, Bernie Sanders looks like he's putting some of the pieces together. Do you think it would be wise for the progressive movement to have Bernie Sanders run again, or should he hold back and try to sort of move his movement towards somebody who's younger?
Look, I'm not going to put words into the senator's mouth. Personally, I think that we need to have progressives in power at every level of government for exactly the same things that's so important. It's the corporate donations, right? We cannot dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. And I think that when we take a look at how the system is currently rigged, it is benefiting people that are not, in fact, actually people at all. They're benefiting the big corporations. And so what I really want to see is I want to see progressives at every level of government. I love Senator Sanders. I worked tirelessly on his campaign. I was a super volunteer also in his 2016 run. And so I would love to see that energy in the White House. But I'm not going to put words into his mouth.
What are some of the things you learned from his campaign that you've incorporated into yours?
That there's a progressive magic, that there's an organizing magic in progressive campaigns that is really the way forward for our country. And what I mean by that specifically is that we as organizers have gone out and we've knocked tens of thousands of doors. We've had conversations with everyday people all across the country. And when you go out and you're actually at folks' doors, you're able to listen, you're able to elevate the stories of working people. And in the elevation of those stories, you're actually able to also figure out what the solutions are. How people are struggling, how people are frustrated. And so when a lot of top pundits in this country are from an ivory tower trying to analyze what is going on in the country, what I see as an organizer and as a progressive organizer is a lot of people have lost touch with the ground. And I think that that's the biggest threat that we have right now to our democracy, is the fact that a lot of campaigns are coming in. They're running cookie cutter, formulaic models that's based upon easy getting corporate donations, and then they run some type of media campaign with mailers and television. And I'm not saying that all that is bad, but what I'm saying is that it is crucially important that we're talking to voters, that we're meeting folks where they're at, because I think ultimately that's a long-term winning strategy for all Americans, particularly when it comes to working class policy.
Oh, I would agree with you 100%. I think in the short term, the challenge is I've heard from a number of progressive candidates who do not take corporate PAC monies, that you still have to spend a lot of time trying to bring in money from other sources in order to be competitive, to be able to put the ads up on social media or television or whatever it is. And so do you feel, I mean, look, I salute your idealism, and I wish everybody was not taking corporate PAC money, but how do you make up the difference when you're running against somebody who is?
Absolutely. I mean, the great thing about this campaign is that up until recently and continuing now, we have to see what the end of June numbers look like. But I actually, in the first quarter, managed to outraise my Trump-backed Republican opponent. Throughout the whole campaign, we've stayed within 10 to 20,000 neck and neck with my opponent. And I think that is a testament to the fact that we actually can run campaigns that are corporate free, that are corporate PAC free, without taking big donations. It requires a specific type of strategy, a strategy that's going after small dollar donations, a strategy that requires, unfortunately, I think that this is ridiculous, but lots and lots of call time on behalf of the candidates. And ultimately, I think that is the way forward. I think that we have to be really, really strict about not accepting corporate donations, because I think that that's our way forward. It keeps us free to be able to make the choices that we know are so important.
What's been the reaction as you've gone around door to door and meeting people, and you're very open about your sexual orientation, which I think is wonderful. I always pray that doesn't become an issue for people, that people just are accepting and want to know, well, what are your ideas for fixing things? How have you been received?
I mean, honestly, it's been wonderful. I feel like there's magic. I have gone into evangelical churches where I've been honored. I've gone into a lot of spaces that are traditional Republican spaces where people have been very friendly, and they're happy to have the conversation. And I think that part of the reason that they're so willing to accept having the conversation is that I'm not coming from a space of more establishment viewpoints. I'm coming from a space of really wanting to fix the system. I think that if we take a look at a lot of people in our district, we take a look at a lot of Republicans in my district are actually originally from the Democratic Party, and they switched over because they see and view the system as being broken because of the corporate donations. So, well,
Derek, good luck to you, and congratulations on how you've done so far. Derek Marshall, he is the Democratic candidate for California's new 23rd congressional district. We will be hearing from him again, I am sure. Derek, thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Take care.
Welcome back to the conversation. I'm David Schuster. The mayor was definitely intoxicated. That was the testimony of Jason Miller, former Trump White House staffer, describing Rudy Giuliani, a Trump advisor, on election night, the very night when Trump campaign aides were saying, okay, Donald Trump has lost the election, and told him so. And Giuliani, inebriated apparently, was telling Trump, no, keep fighting, declare you've won. That's just one of the sugar plums that has come out of the January 6th Special Investigative Committee hearings. Joining us to talk about this is John Nichols. He's a journalist, author. He's currently the national affairs correspondent for The Nation. He has a must-read piece entitled "Trump's Coup Plot Relied on Giuliani's Inebriated Lies." John, great stuff. Were you surprised when this came out?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, that's why I'm in journalism. I like to be surprised.
When Giuliani, I thought there were a lot of things that he's done over the last year and a half that were crazy, and where he had the news conference, getting caught in the Borat scene, some of the things that when he had the hair stuff that was leaking, and so I had suspected, okay, maybe he is something of a lush, maybe he does like alcohol, but the idea that on election night he would be drunk and that's who Trump is listening to.
That's exactly right, and that this wasn't particularly early in the or late in the evening, right? I mean, he got to the White House at a time when everybody was there for the, the initial results, and he was clearly arrived by all accounts in an inebriated state. They tried to hustle him away from Trump. They tried to get him. They said, "Well, why don't you go talk to Jared?" Which is, I think, the official White House line, or was the line on any troubled individual. So they tried to get him over to talk to Jared Kushner, but somehow Giuliani kept pushing his way up into the territory where Trump was at. According to Giuliani himself, he spoke to Trump several times. And what Giuliani was saying was completely lunacy, right? It was something that he himself should have known to be totally false. And that was that, at a certain point in the evening, you should declare victory and say that no more votes should be counted, because the additional votes that would be counted might be fraudulent. It was a nuts proposal, one that Trump's campaign aides, his longtime White House aides, his family members all said that's a bad idea. And so, of course, Trump turned to Giuliani and said, "Well, let's take notes."
What happened? I mean, I'm going to get back to the January 6th hearing, but what happened to Rudy Giuliani? I mean, he was, a well-respected federal prosecutor, mayor of New York City. I mean, America's mayor with 9/11, did an admirable job in sort of holding people together with all of that. Seemed, like he could have been a, viable presidential candidate, although didn't really do so well when he ran in 2008, I believe. But I mean, what happened to him over the last 5 years?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't think it's just the last 5 years. I covered the presidential races that I covered when he was playing around with presidential politics, and it was a mess. He ran lousy campaigns in his later years. So there's pretty good evidence that at a certain point, two things happened. Number one, he sort of lost the thread, i.e. getting out of New York City, which he knew well, and he knew the politics of that place. He sort of fell apart. But number two, it's clear that he is emblematic of a certain kind of politician in the Republican Party, which is that when Trump came along and sort of, unscrewed the cork and let the crazy out, these folks, instead of saying, "Hey, that's wrong, we don't want to go there," and pushing back against it, said, "Oh wow, this is the new politics. This is who we're going to be." And Giuliani, to a larger extent, probably than almost anyone else, embraced this sort of sycophantic relationship with Trump, i.e. telling Trump what he wanted to hear, and then bizarrely acting on it, which wasn't just on election night, but also in that classic scene you referenced where he was at the Four Seasons Total Landscaping parking lot trying to shut down the Pennsylvania results.
And I almost think with Donald Trump that the hearings had provided a certain sort of glimpse that maybe people feared was there but didn't really want to believe it. In other words, it was news to me that so many people, the White House staff, campaign operatives, were telling him on election night and the days after, "You've lost. This isn't, the numbers aren't there." And the stuff from the attorney general saying, the claims of fraud are not there. And I suppose Donald Trump could have said, "Okay, well, if they're not there, let's just sort of take a deep breath and see what develops," as opposed to immediately tweeting out, "The election was stolen." So what is it about Donald? Is it that much of a psychopath, even worse than people had suspected, that despite people that he relied on telling him it was over, he decides to just go and lie to the American people?
I think that one thing to understand is that most of these people who were around him were lifers. They're Republican Party lifers. They went to Trump because he was the big guy, not because they necessarily liked him or agreed with him. And that certainly, it refers to Barr, among others. They gave Trump a lot of aid and comfort and support for as long as they could. But when it became clear that Trump wasn't going to be the dominant figure, i.e. he wasn't going to be reelected, they became at least somewhat realistic. Trump didn't like that. And I think the thing to understand about Donald Trump, and I've written about him for a very long time, is that he has never been a politician. He has always been a businessman, a New York businessman, a deal maker. And in that game, sort of shooting big, taking your chances on something that seems crazy is sometimes rewarded. And I think for Trump, that became his mentality. He transferred it into politics where it just doesn't work. Ultimately, it did work, I should say, in 2016, but ultimately it becomes sort of a disastrous circumstance.
As I've said to some of my colleagues and people on the air, the January 6th hearings have been unlike most congressional hearings you will ever see. Very succinct, very pointed, it moves along, there seems to have a theme. What's been your reaction to the two hearings we've had so far and the way that the committee is putting all of this together?
They're clearly well produced, and that's something that, as somebody who's covered politics for a very long time, covered Capitol Hill for a very long time, I'm actually quite happy with. The fact of the matter is, I know there's some people say, oh, well, it's too quick, it's too made for TV. Well, the fact of the matter is that people's government should be something that they can consume at a relatively quick and reasonable rate. And historically, congressional hearings have been long, boring. Every politician has to have his say or her say, and things are repeated. It doesn't get any place. Usually the first day, as you well know, David, of any sort of major set of hearings doesn't deal with the issues, right? You don't have the witnesses or anything like that. What they've clearly decided to do with the January 6th committee is to cut a lot of the rigmarole out, cut a lot of the kind of bureaucracy out, and get to the point. And in doing that, they've actually produced pretty gripping hearings, especially when you're getting kind of deep insights about what's going on inside the White House.
Yeah, gripping for certainly everybody who's watching, everybody who's sort of following politics. It does feel very weighty. It feels heavy. It feels solemn and important. I guess the big question that I would have for everybody, including you, is this breaking through in your estimation? I mean, I think only 20 million watched the first hearing, which is about half what would normally watch a presidential State of the Union. Are the hearings moving things as far as public opinion or moving public perceptions about Donald Trump?
Probably not a lot. Let's be honest, we are an incredibly divided country. So the hearings are going to be very satisfactory to people who had a pretty bad impression of Trump already and now are getting more reinforced on it. They're going to be dismissed by people who are Trump defenders. And we already saw that with Fox to some extent. But here's the subtlety, David. First and foremost, it is the job of members of Congress who swear an oath to the Constitution to get to the bottom of things of this sort and to do the right thing, whether you're moving a political needle or not. So in that regard, I think they're doing the right thing. But second, I do think that there's a great mass of Americans who are not engaged on a daily basis with politics, who don't obsess about it. They get the headlines, they get a little bit of it. The fact that these hearings are putting the word coup into play, that they're clearly identifying Trump as the center of a conspiracy, that may not move everybody, but a substantial portion of Americans, I think, are going to get a new overlay as regards their thinking on Trump. And I do think it will ultimately do some damage to him.
Yeah, and I think you've also put your finger on the pulse of what's really important. That is for historical reasons. I think people will look back 30, 40, 50 years from now and be very sort of pleased and proud of how Congress handled this investigation. Perhaps in some ways, like some of us, when we look back at the old Watergate hearings in certain moments, think, wow, that was really impressive. And clearly the nation and the Constitution was more important. The rule of law was more important than any individual politics. But as far as sort of the next sort of question a lot of people have, there does seem to be a divide, even within the committee about, and you pointed out, Donald Trump at the center of a criminal conspiracy. Do you get the sense that the committee will actually make a criminal referral to the Department of Justice to sort of take this information that's essentially been teed up for them? Or I've seen some reporting that even Liz Cheney is sort of reluctant to do that.
It is a huge internal debate. There is simply no question that there are two things that this committee has to do. Number one, it has to make a recommendation as regards accountability for Trump and those around him. And number two, it has to make recommendations for policy changes that might assure that this will never happen again. And on both of those issues, I can tell you from talking to committee members, there's a debate on how far to go, how aggressive to go, whether it should be a recommendation or sort of a reference that you hope the Department of Justice picks up on. But I can tell you there are members, and frankly, I even think Liz Cheney may fall into this camp, who believe that ultimately some recommendation to the Department of Justice as regards Trump is going to be necessary. Otherwise, the committee, I think that questions start to be asked about why the committee went to all this trouble if it was just to create a report, not to actually get us to someplace. You can't say that there was a coup attempt and that the former president of the United States was at the center of a conspiracy, and then at the end of the saying all this, go, oh, never mind. That doesn't work, I don't think.
And then what kind of pressure does it put on Attorney General Merrick Garland, and what do you think ultimately he will do?
puts huge pressure on him. And I think that if there is a clear recommendation, I don't believe that he has any choice but to act upon it. It's just a question of how clear that recommendation is, whether it says specifically what he should act upon, and then how he might do so. And of course, as you know, the way the Department of Justice works, it won't be to say immediately we're going to prosecute. It will be to say we're opening an inquiry.
Yeah, and can you imagine if you're a resident of Washington, D.C., you get called in for grand jury service and suddenly you're told, oh yeah, this is a referral from Congress about the president, former president of the United States being at the heart of a criminal conspiracy. Let's start reviewing the information. I mean, talk about incredible pressure on a grand jury as well. But I just get the sense that so many Americans would, at least there'd be a certain satisfaction if the Department of Justice took whatever Congress did and at least presented it to a group of ordinary citizens. In any case, John, thanks as always for doing this. John Nichols, he's the national affairs correspondent for The Nation, also an esteemed author. We appreciate you being on the conversation.
It's an honor to be with you, and a good conversation it was.
And that'll do it for this show. On behalf of Asher Cofield and the entire gang at the Young Turks, I'm David Schuster. Thanks for watching.
Do all of you know the Young Turks?
An outlet like yourself that are willing to cover this story from the very beginning.
You have the Young Turks and a bunch of other progressive forces saying this is the time to fight for our values.
And I think right now there are a lot of progressive voters, many leftists who feel like they don't have a home.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
What we've done is sustainable, slow, healthy growth. And I think that's the way news should be, where you don't rely on sensationalist stuff. You don't lean on whatever's trendy in the news at any given moment. You know, you just go with the truth.
You gave me a platform.
You've uplifted so many other progressive voices through this network, and you're constantly looking for people that you can amplify through the work we do, through the infrastructure that you built at TYT.
It takes those early people who believe that can really be the seeds of this movement, and that has been the Young Turks.
We're super serious about the news. We also managed to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We're not TYT, you're TYT.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? It was a white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it though.
I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting on Old School?
Probably.
That boss gaslit all his female employees. People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why didn't I just punch myself in the face and poke my eye out? I'm 47 and I just figured it out like earlier this year.
You figured out somebody was doing it to you, or that you were
that it was that it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize it.
Right.
Just remember, don't pop any bubble wrap because all that air comes from China.
Oh my God.
Another good point.
Drop it. Power panel, Jake Uygur, John Iadarola, Rayyvana, and look, the word on the street is that we're gonna have an excellent show. That's the buzz, and I'm here to tell you that the buzz is correct, okay? It's gonna happen. Rayyvana, I haven't checked in a while. Real quick before we get started, you still banned from Twitter?
No, I got it back almost the night after our video was posted, where we talked about it on that power panel. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Not a big deal. Is the power panel a little too powerful? I mean, that's what people are saying. That's what they're buzzing about. It's just on me to report that news to you guys. So got that problem fixed right away. All right, awesome. I'd love to hear the sound of justice. Okay. Speaking of justice, I bring to you John Iadarola.
Am I an embodiment of justice?
Yes, you are Captain America.
Because I don't think this story is necessary. I don't know what's going on.
No, not the story.
I do have the shield though, thanks to an awesome member of our audience.
Captain America is for truth, justice, and the American way.
I hear that.
Justice is right in the middle of it.
Well, when it comes to the news, I can do this all day. Let's jump into this story. Oh, that's a reference, and I get it. Which was also a reference. Anyway, we're gonna talk about it incredibly. Great, now I'm making jokes and this is super serious. Let's get serious, people.
Serious, everybody.
Rayyvana, get serious, come on.
Mainly her.
Okay, mainly her.
Yeah, mainly.
The British government has announced that the founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, can in fact be extradited, sent to the United States to stand trial on espionage charges. Now, it isn't necessarily going to happen. He is expected to appeal it. This is how the legal system works, but it is far more likely to happen right now. And for a number of people who have been legally defending Julian Assange or advocating on his behalf for some time, this is a particularly scary move. On the other hand, you have the Home Secretary of the UK, Priti Patel, who said that his extradition would not be incompatible with his human rights, including his right to a fair trial and to freedom of expression, sounding like some sort of bizarre cyborg there. In any event, others are incredibly worried, not just about what could happen to him, although that's a significant concern, but about the precedent that is being set with this ongoing legal effort and whatever the next phases could be. You have one of the heads of Amnesty International, Agnes Callamard, previously worked at the United Nations as a human rights expert, said that allowing Julian Assange to be extradited to the US would put him at great risk and sends a chilling message to journalists the world over, and that might well be the intent, in fact, not just the effect. But they also say, if the extradition proceeds, Amnesty International is extremely concerned that Assange faces a high risk of prolonged solitary confinement, which would violate the prohibition on torture or other ill treatment. Diplomatic assurances provided by the US that Assange will not be kept in solitary confinement cannot be kept on face value given previous history, both in terms of how he has been held in the past, but also that's the United States, criminal justice system. We use solitary confinement as like a standard everyday tool, and it is just as inhumane as Amnesty International is saying there. So we have more on this, including Julian Assange's wife, but I wanted to give both of you an opportunity to weigh in.
Yeah, so this isn't about Assange the person. This is about principles that we have as a country or don't have. So the two, and I say that because, look, there's some things that Assange did later in his career that I didn't love, like offering $100,000 for information about stories that kind of incentivizes you to create that evidence, whether it actually exists or not. So I've got some very specific bones to pick on issues like that. But this is not about any of that. This is about his earlier work, which was exemplary. And by the way, world changing. It's, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, exactly what journalism is supposed to be. So the two principles at hand here are freedom of speech and freedom of the press, right? As one, are supposed to be our First Amendment, and more importantly, how Assange has been outcast from the rest of the press. Like the government picked him off because he was easier. He didn't have a big brand. He didn't have a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So he wasn't the New York Times or CNN. So they go, oh, that guy's an independent journalist, and so he won't get as much backing from the rest of the press and everybody else. And he caused the most amount of trouble because he's not playing ball. The rest of the mainstream press, relatively speaking, plays ball with the people who are powerful, gives us credit for always being right, and they write down our opinions as if it's true, and I can go on and on. But he didn't play ball. So we're gonna banish him, and in that way, we intimidate the rest of the press, and we effectively take away freedom of the press, and we beat up an outsider, which the powerful love to do, right? And then the second issue is even broader, as John pointed out. It's that the rest of the world now is afraid, certainly portions of their governments are afraid, and their people are afraid to send us any detainee, because whether it's about this issue or any issue, because we torture people and we do it regularly. And you think, oh, come on, really? Torture, that's a strong. Solitary confinement is definitely torture by all international law. Why? Because it drives you crazy, literally. It's not like, oh, metaphorically, kind of, oh, it was a little tough. I mean, even a limited period of time of solitary confinement, it causes significant mental issues, deterioration, etc. So they've studied it. There's no question about it. And we do it at a barbaric rate. I mean, the rest of the world is barely now waking up to, oh, America's kind of monstrous. It's like, in the old days, I was sending someone to Saudi Arabia, they're gonna chop off their arms and stuff, which by the way, they kind of do, right? And it's still the case, unfortunately, after all these years. But America, human rights and the United Nations and stuff. No, we torture people here. We did it under Cheney and Bush. That was illegal until then, and Obama afterwards said, it is now legal. Okay, I choose not to torture people, but it's not a crime anymore. So now people are very legitimately worried that yes, Assange will be tortured, and he'll be tortured for the crime of doing journalism. So that's the sick state of America today. Rayyvana.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, right? Julian Assange is a journalist and a publisher who did journalism and publishing and is being prosecuted by the United States government for the crime of exposing their crimes and making them look bad, which is a big no-no apparently. But I also just want to point out that this is not like one party or the other. This is a bipartisan attack on journalism because it started under Obama, continued under the Trump administration, even though he had praised Julian Assange and sort of heavily indicated that there might be some sort of pardon for him, which never came. And it's being continued under the Biden administration. So it doesn't matter what party's in power, this attack on journalism, continues on.
And it's also amazing, like I understand, there's this thing in the media where people just make everything about everything else. And so I try to avoid that, but like they've been hounding him across the face of the earth for so many years. And I don't know, did Trump try to do a coup? I don't know, we have to get into his frame of mind. Did he believe that it was a coup? Did he believe that the stuff that, as Cenk pointed out too, if you are powerful, well-connected, if you are considered untouchable, you can do basically whatever you want. Stuff that is far more, objectively more damaging than anything that Julian Assange did. And in the case of him, they're gonna be pursuing this. If they don't get him this time, for decades, it will never end, and I don't understand it. In any event, I want to go to some video of Stella Assange, Julian Assange's wife, talking about this development.
This was always a possibility that Priti Patel would approve sending Julian to the country that has plotted to assassinate him, to the country that Julian exposed the crimes of. And we're not at the end of the road here. We're gonna fight this. We're gonna use every appeal avenue. And we're gonna fight. I'm gonna spend every waking hour fighting for Julian until he's free, until justice is served.
And the next steps in that path include the possibility, as I alluded to earlier, that Assange can appeal the decision at London's High Court. That would then have to give its approval for a challenge to proceed. Ultimately, it could reach the UK Supreme Court, but if it's refused, then he could be extradited within the next 28 days. And God only knows what the timeline would be like after that. But if he is found guilty in the end of all of the 17 Espionage Act charges that he's facing, originally brought by the Trump administration, he faces 175 years in prison, which that is just utter. There's a lot that comes up day to day in the news that just leaves you dumbfounded at the state of things. But that is absolute madness. Like murderers don't face. I will never understand it. I don't understand the obsession. Whether you like him as an individual or not, and I think that there's plenty that he's done outside of his work that's just reprehensible as a leftist. Like he was perfectly happy to help a fascist get elected as president of the United States, doing untold damage to so many vulnerable communities in the US. But this is about his work. It is madness that you could spend a year in prison, let alone close to 2 centuries, and that should not be controversial. I don't know why it is. I understand inside of the news media, as Cenk so perfectly put it, but for regular people, if they pay attention to this, and it won't get talked about much, so there's a good chance that they won't, nobody would understand why any of this works the way that it does.
Yeah, well, so that's gonna get to my critique of the rest of the media in a second, but first to double down on what Rayyvana was saying. So it's not just bipartisanship here in America, it's every government that's dealt with this, the UK, Sweden, etc. Whatever the American empire wants, the American empire receives. You would like us to turn over a journalist? Well, I mean, look, again, the Saudis chopped up Jamal Khashoggi, who was a journalist for the Washington Post.
Yep.
Instead, what we're threatening to end someone's life by putting them in prison for 175 years and maybe torture them for the rest of their lives. Okay, we're better, marginally. We shouldn't be marginally better than, by the way, our allies who are chopping up journalists, or our ally that murdered a journalist, Shireen Abu Akleh, right? So, and then that gets to the rest of the press. What are you guys doing? I mean, you should, at the White House press conferences, you guys should be going nuts over Assange and Shireen, etc., because that's killing journalists. That's imprisoning journalists for doing their jobs. But they don't view them as one of them. They view them as the dissenters. And punishing dissent is good, because then corporate media has even more power because they don't dissent. Then they get more access, and they're the only show in town, and they're a monopoly, and you better be inside the mob, because if you're not, well, you got no protection, you got no capos. Oh, you did great journalism, Assange, and exposed how awful the American government was acting. Well, maybe you shouldn't have done that, huh? Right? Where the hell are you guys? Bunch of frauds. Frauds, totally, utterly frauds. Okay, so back to the Trump, the fraud. You know, the person who threatened to assassinate him is Mike Pompeo, working for Donald Trump. They put together a memo about how should we murder Assange. That's after Trump was like, I don't know, maybe I give him a pardon. Meanwhile, he's like, well, go kill him, who cares? Just do a memo on how to kill and murder that guy. He helped you anyway, you idiot, right? But he doesn't care. He doesn't care about anybody, right?
There's no loyalty.
Yeah, of course not. So for God's sake, just let him go already. He's a journalist, let him go. And the fact that everybody isn't outraged by it shows you, no, they're not interested in challenging the powerful. They're interested in serving the powerful.
Yeah, and you brought up two things I wanted to talk about, Cenk, which was Shireen's murder and the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, because I think that it's like all of those two journalists and Julian Assange are, emblematic of the, Biden administration's attack on journalism, because Biden is planning a trip to Saudi Arabia next month to go beg MBS for more oil. This is the country that murdered Jamal Khashoggi, brutally, violently murdered him, and there's no repercussions seemingly from America, despite the fact that Jamal Khashoggi was a WAPO reporter and an American citizen. The same goes for Shireen. Abby Martin, wonderful journalist, asked Anthony Blinken what the United States was going to do about it, and he pretended that there had been no, credible investigation. That's what he said. We don't know that it was the Israeli government that killed her, despite the fact that by that time CNN had published their investigation that showed that not only was she murdered by the IDF, that it was a targeted attack, that they targeted her to be murdered. So this is just a broad attack on journalism, and it is a scary time to be a journalist. When I say that, I don't mean an establishment media talking head, but like a real journalist who's uncovering actual crimes being committed globally.
Yeah, it's always a good time to be a news actor. The news actors never run out of work, right? But actual reporters, it's a very dangerous time. Yeah, Biden's a monster for what he's doing to Assange. I don't care what all you comfortable neo-libs in Washington, they go, oh, you can't call Biden a monster just because we're gonna go put a journalist in jail and maybe torture him. No, that's the problem, not me calling Biden a monster. No, but Assange is not in the elites. Biden is in the elites, and you're offending the elites. You're a very bad person. Oh, do you agree with what Assange said about Trump? I don't care what Assange said about Trump. That's not the point of this. Can you concentrate? Do you have any principles? And the answer for the powerful is, as always, no. By the way, they've already ruined the guy's life. How many years has he spent now hiding from them? Whether it's in an embassy and now under detention. For God's sake, you've done enough damage, okay? Is it not enough? No, for the powerful, the biggest problem in the world is dissent. It must be criminalized and it must be punished. But if you actually committed crimes like Trump did, no, you're free to go.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to actually destroy democracy? You're free to go. You're among the elites. No consequences at all. But you touch the elites a tiny bit, like Assange did, that's it. I'm gonna chase you to the end of the earth. That's what the ugly face of the empire looks like.
It's actually kind of amazing that he hasn't turned up dead. considering how much some of the most powerful, I know it sounds hard. Well, we're the Young Turks, it's not CNN. We can, like considering his enemies, it is amazing that he has lived as long as he has. And yeah, all those caveats. Okay, with that, we do have to take our first break though. There's a lot of other stuff to talk about, including Lindsey Graham, potentially duking it out with Ted Cruz to be the most pathetic modern day Republican. We'll have the video evidence of that after this.
All right, so let's start with Twitch. Avenger Dragon says, so much power in one panel. Resto Dragon says, they're obsessed that he exposed things that massively embarrass the government and that can't be allowed by the powerful. That's exactly right. That's just summarized 10 minutes of our show. Fanfi Crocs.
We could have saved time.
I know, right? Fanfi Crocs writes, and Cenk, I wish you guys could swear and be even more open with what you guys can say. Does the FCC prevent you from it? Yes, but so we're on a lot of 24-hour platforms now like Roku, Pluto, Samsung. So go to tyt.com and see the platforms we're on. Really, we're on almost all the platforms. Just type in TYT or the Young Turks and you'll get us. So that's part of the reason why we don't swear. The other reason is honestly on Facebook and YouTube, where a majority of our audience is, it a lot of times demonetizes the videos. So you can't make any money from it, and if you can't do that, you're out of business, and then you don't even have the show. So it is what it is, and we just have to live with it. But for the members, when we do members-only stuff that is not going to go on any of those platforms, we curse all the time. So become a member, you'll get more curses. How's that for an enticement?
Yeah.
tyt.com/join, okay? Or hit the join button below on YouTube. So by the way, today is food for thought trivia. So we got the trivia question for you guys. Get ready. 200 of you are gonna win $100, $100 gift card to Blue Apron, true gift card. You don't have to put your credit card info, no catches. So $100 tonight for 200 of you. So this is a great time to join. I have the trivia question. I have it. Ooh, it's about you, John.
What?
Okay, so we'll see. All right, now I'm gonna go to Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon in the member section. I can think of a particular ex-president and dozens of his seditious crime mob who need to be prosecuted well before Assange. 100% right. Boomer Dragon Cat says, loving this power panel. Rayyvana, you remind me of me at that age. And then in parentheses, that's a good thing.
Oh, thank you.
And what do you have, like a 70s filter on today?
Oh, my webcam is, I'm using my laptop webcam, so I'm a little grainy, but that's okay.
No, it feels like it's, doesn't it feel like the 70s?
Filter.
Yeah, it's very classic Hollywood up in here. I like it.
Yeah. All right, I got to keep going. All right. Shy Coltrane 42 with a very good point. Chelsea was lucky; she dodged the bullet. Biden won't be as forgiving and not much help. Just shocking. Good luck, Julian. Exactly right. I mean, that Obama pardoned Chelsea right before he left office. One of the few good things that he did. Otherwise, she'd be in this hellhole as well. Theater Goddess makes a quick point. Humans are social creatures who need mental stimulation. Locking them in a cell with nothing to see or do or no one to see is torture and shouldn't happen to anyone. The entire world community, except us, agrees with you. We'll be back. back on TYT. Cenk, John, and Rayyvana with you guys. John's got more news.
I, in fact, do. Who is the most pathetic Republican senator? I know what you're thinking. It's obviously Ted Cruz. Almost anyone would say that, including most of his family. But we have a dark horse candidate, Lindsey Graham, speaking today at the Faith and Freedom Coalition conference in Nashville, Tennessee, decided to debase himself to try to get Trump's favor, I guess. Take a look.
You know what I liked about Trump? Everybody was afraid of him. Including me. The Chinese ambassador came in and said, we're trying to figure out Trump. I said, take a number, get in line. But here's one thing I can tell you about him, don't cross him. Don't you miss that? Don't you miss an America that people respected and were a little bit afraid of?
Dear God. So that is, look, he's getting his applause by sucking up to Trump, but that is at least a genre that he has often dabbled in. If you don't recall, here are a few of the standout moments.
I actually like President Trump. He's been very nice to me. He's allowed me to be in his world. He allows me to give my 2 cents worth about different issues when he was president. This is his party. If you don't get that, you missed a lot at CPAC. Let's just be honest. The bad guys were afraid of Trump. He's the most consequential Republican since Ronald Reagan. It's his nomination if he wants it, and I think he'll get reelected in 2024. And I'm not going to vote for anybody for leader of the Senate as a Republican unless they can prove to me that they can advocate an American first agenda and have a working relationship with President Trump, because if you can't do that, you will fail. President Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize and then some. President Trump is the most consequential Republican in the party. If Mitch McConnell doesn't understand that, he's missing a lot. As to President Trump, in that poll, you own the Republican Party, my friend. You are the hope of the future of conservatism, President Trump. Well, he owns the Republican Party. It's his nomination. The president has a hell of a story to tell about what he did for this country, and more importantly, what he can do. This is the party of Donald Trump. If you think otherwise, you're in for a rude awakening. If you play Trump, you're going to be a big loser.
Okay, almost as big of a loser as Trump in 2020. Is it his party? Yes, in a very real sense it is, I suppose. Although those numbers have been shifting throughout the last year or so. He's also destroyed whatever it was in the Republican Party that Lindsey Graham at one point clearly liked. He still wants to be in power, and to do that he has to have Trump's favor, that's true. But the idea that he can't see through Trump, he doesn't understand how petulant and spiteful Trump is, all of this is nonsense because he's experienced it. Lindsey Graham has been repeatedly attacked and mocked by Donald Trump. Donald Trump routinely in just recent days calls him a Republican in name only. It is so pathetic, and it might be that this is actually required of Lindsey Graham to stay as a relevant Republican, to have Trump not support, a primary contender. Maybe he does have to debase himself in this way, but at some point you have to have self-respect. If you supposedly admire strong men, consider being one. Just resign. Whatever's left of your dignity, your self-esteem, go take that and the millions of dollars you have and just go live the rest of your life. It is so utterly pathetic.
Yeah, so I think it's even more pathetic than we even realize, because it's not that we don't realize it, it's that it's not repeated enough in the press so that it doesn't sink into people. Trump and Lindsey Graham were kind of battling for the 2016 presidency during those primaries. And then Graham said a lot of terrible things about Trump when he thought, oh, this outsider, he's never gonna win. I have a better chance than he does. And then when Trump crushed him, and then he became Gollum that you see here. And precious, right? But there's another layer to it. I mean, Trump has said the most horrific things about Lindsey Graham. He even doxed Lindsey Graham. He gave out his actual phone number in the middle of those primaries and said everybody should harass him. And that was the beginning of his threats to other politicians, physical threats, right? And Trump once said about Lindsey Graham, he's one of the dumbest human beings I've ever seen. And Lindsey Graham comes out and says, oh, he's a real leader. I love him. I think he's a real leader of the Republican Party. I love it. You got to go through Trump. Trump's the man. Right? Like, Jesus Christ, man. I mean, it's so pathetic. You have to avert your eyes. You're like, Jesus. It's like a gruesome train wreck. It's just disgusting to look at. That's who Lindsey Graham is.
It's the monkey thing that you talked about years ago. It's the just offering up your banana.
Yeah.
And that was what the speech was. It was him offering up his banana, and the whole room was filled up with monkeys offering up their banana to Trump. They're all scared of him. One of the most pathetic human beings to ever walk the face of the earth. They're all terrified of him.
Yeah, for monkeys, they offer up their bananas to alpha males. And if the alpha male does not have to be nice to them, and if the alpha male is mean to them, they offer more bananas, okay? And it depends on the kind of monkey, of course. And one of the things is, okay, there's a lot of
different monkeys, different cultural practices, obviously, we all know this.
Okay, anyways, so a lot of times it's bananas, but sometimes like just symbolically, they'll just offer their hand and they'll do this. And that's Lindsey Graham. Okay, and so if you were paying attention in that to the crowd in that speech, and he says, I like that people were scared of him. People are like, okay, polite applause, and he's like, even me. Then everyone's like, that's true. That's a Republican crowd. That's a super right-wing crowd.
Yeah.
And their reaction to that, go back and rewind it if you want, it was hilarious, right? Once he admitted that he was part of the banana giving monkeys, they're like, all right, go ahead. Otherwise, we're gonna call you a rhino and say how stupid you are. So look, as much damage as they do to the country, which is massive, seeing people like Lindsey Graham humiliate themselves, debase themselves on a daily basis has been quite a pleasure.
Oh yeah, this was honestly some of the most cucked stuff I've ever seen in my life. Like, I don't know though, because there's, of course, Ted Cruz exists, and Trump essentially told Ted Cruz that his wife had a horse face and was disgusting and so ugly that no one would ever want to have sex with her. And then Ted Cruz, there's that famous picture of him phone banking for Trump, just like looking so miserable on the phone with the Trump side behind him. And he's done nothing but praise Trump ever since. So like they're in a cuck-off competition with one another, him and Lindsey Graham. But Graham did say something that was true, which was that Trump is the Republican Party, and that's true at that point. I don't know so much now. His endorsed candidates haven't been winning, so maybe that shows that his stranglehold on the party is a little bit looser. But I mean, the Republican platform in 2020 was just whatever Trump wanted it to be. It was very true at that time. You needed to be nice to Trump. Otherwise your electoral chances were a little bit lower than they would be otherwise. So, they really were just truly an entire party of cucks.
Yeah, so I want to build real quick off of what Rayyvana said. So number one, she called it a cuck-off, fair enough. I think it's a cucktastrophe. So
they're competing for top cuck.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Top cuck.
Pack your balls and go.
Okay. Okay. And you know how Jefferson and Adams had that rivalry, and at the end, one of them said, "Does Jefferson still live on their deathbed, or does Adams still live?" And in this case, it's going to be, "Does Cruz still live? Am I the biggest cuck of all?" Okay, so, but now to the serious point that Rayyvana made. Look, guys, it is a good strategy to intimidate people in your own party. It just is. So sad day. If that hurts people's feelings, I don't care. It's true. I wish we had a progressive who could bully the cowards in the Democratic Party into compliance with higher wages, more health care for everyone. That's actually my goal, that person exists one day. But there's a second part of this. He said at the very end there, and Trump talked about it at that same conference, don't you miss the good old days when Trump was in charge? And this is what drives me nuts about the Democratic Party, because unfortunately that is probably a winning strategy for them to say. Look, if the Democrats had made it clear when Trump had the good economy that it was obviously riding off of Obama's wave, but like the idiots that they are, Pelosi, Schumer, and everybody else was like, oh no, you never make your own case. And so they pretended like Trump brought in this spectacular economy on day one, a thing that is not economically possible, that it's just not a factual thing. You cannot just get it going. It takes years to ramp up, right? And by the way, we're super fair. So Biden's economic issues are not just Trump's fault. So you could say, hey, normally you'd have a Trump wave. And by the way, Republicans do this all the time. They inherit a good economy from Democrats, they ruin it and hand it off to the next Democrat and then blame him for it, right? But that's not exactly what happened with Biden. Both Trump and Biden printed tons and tons of money, trillions of dollars, and handed it largely to the biggest companies in the world, okay? And some to real Americans.
Yeah.
That's what drove up inflation. And we did a story that shows you that there's a loophole in Dodd-Frank that's causing at least 25% of the price hikes. That's a giant number, and that's bankers, but Trump loves the bankers. And so no, deregulation, deregulate the banks. Do not touch my beloved banker friends. And so they did speculation on commodities like oil that drove the price up, but it's also Biden's fault. He can actually regulate the bankers right now and lower prices by 25%, but he won't do it because both parties are corrupt. Yeah. So they're gonna get to say, hey, it was great during the Trump years, and people are gonna kind of remember good economic times versus bad economic times, and we're ruined.
Yeah. Why don't we turn to other news?
Yep.
I'm sure this won't get you fired up. The strategists in the Democratic Party are kind of in a tough position as the midterms draw near. Biden and the Democratic Party are incredibly unpopular, and they have basically nothing to run on because, they chose Biden and that was inevitably going to happen. But they do have a strategy, a wild card that they're banking on. It is running ads for Republicans, for the most extreme Republicans, to try to get them to win their primary challenges. And so this is being reported on by the New York Times. Even as national Democrats set off alarms over the threats posed by far-right Republican candidates, like in the January 6 hearings, their campaign partners are pursuing an enormously risky strategy, promoting some of those same candidates in GOP primaries in hopes that those candidates will be easier for Democrats to beat. And we're gonna profile a couple of examples of this, but the first involves a race in California. There is a new campaign ad attacking Representative David Valadao, a relatively moderate Republican, for whatever that's worth in the modern era, for voting to impeach Donald Trump. And we have a bit of that ad. Take a look at this.
Same label, so Republicans got to check the ingredients. David Valadao claims he's Republican. Yet, David Valadao voted to impeach President Trump. Yeah, Valadao voted to impeach Trump. And Republican Chris Matisse, a true conservative, 100% pro-Trump and proud.
Just to be clear, that is a Democratic linked ad that is trying to get the 100% pro-Trump guy elected. They call him military veteran, local businessman. The other guy, he voted to impeach Trump. Like literally everyone who donated to make that ad wanted Trump to be impeached. But now that's the kiss of death, and you can see there the comparison they make, the weird can stuff. But of course, like the guy that they're pushing for, maybe might be easier to beat. But if he gets into office, he's a legitimate crazy person, as is the case in most of these instances where the Democrats are meddling in Republican primaries. And look, they're doing this because they're in a tough spot. But because they're in a tough spot, it is increasingly likely that these radical candidates could end up winning. And so that makes the strategy extremely risky.
Yeah, so this is a terrible idea. So, but at the same time, I wanna acknowledge that you can't have cookie cutter approaches. So is there a time in politics where spending money on a crazy person in the other party makes sense? Yes, but it's super rare, okay? So they had an example of McCaskill doing it with Todd Akin back in 2012, and that is a very good example of it, and I can name you a couple of others. But you have to be extraordinarily careful, and it should be in a rare situation. But the Democrats are not at all careful, let alone extraordinarily careful. Now, the best example of this gone awry is the Clintons were positive that the best person to run against would be Donald Trump. So they continually aided and abetted him during the Republican primaries. There's even a story about how Bill Clinton went to play golf with Donald Trump before the Republican primaries and encouraged him to run, because they thought, oh, he'll destroy the Republican Party. And of course, there's no way he could beat Hillary Clinton. I mean, look, after you've already done the world's worst political calculation, literally, I mean, certainly in American history, the worst political calculation ever, to double down on that across the country today in this environment is nuts. So guys, the country's in a populist mood. Of course, the Democratic Party, filled to the rim with elites, doesn't see it at all. They're like, oh, if we get these wild-eyed populists to run against the establishment Democrats, we'll win easily. Will you? Or did you just spend millions and millions of dollars helping the worst people on earth? And guys, once you spend the money to build up their name recognition, you can't take it back. That is just a huge win for those candidates and the Republican Party overall. And every dollar you spend helping a Republican is a dollar you could have spent on a Democrat. And of course, what would they have done with that money anyway? They would have spent it trying to hurt progressives within the Democratic Party. That's all they're spending it on today, right? They're not, all of the primary ads are like, this progressive is not enough of a Democrat. And they literally take Republican money to run ads against progressives. Then they take Democratic money to run ads on behalf of Republicans. That's how deeply incompetent the Democratic Party is. The only reason why they haven't absolutely cratered is because of corporate media that does just giant, complete fabrication marketing on their behalf. Oh, they're so smart, they're so crafty, really crafty, so fourth dimensional chess. No, they're a bunch of morons who lost to Donald Trump and are now helping the worst people on earth.
Yep.
I mean, this is the exact type of incompetence that I've really just come to expect from the Democratic Party. But I mean, but really, what are we to expect from the Democrats and the DNC when all they do is hire losers? And when I say losers, I don't mean personality-wise. Although a little bit, I mean personality-wise. But look at the people who are running the DNC. These are people who lost their campaigns. Jamie Harrison, who is one of the people who was cited a couple times as being one of the masterminds behind this brilliant electoral strategy of propping up fascists, lost his race in 2020 by a large margin. Debbie Wasserman Schultz lost her race. She was also working for the Clinton campaign at the time that they employed the same failure strategy with Trump. I mean, even Tom Perez was going to lose to be the DNC chair before Obama stepped in and made sure a real progressive like Keith Ellison, who's actually a winner and actually knows how to win elections, wouldn't have that position, because then the Democrats might actually get something done. But this is just a way for them to make sure they never have to have policy goals, to make sure they never have to run on anything and just can continue to run against someone who is scary. It's just such deep incompetence within the party.
Well, I can see, I'm listening to both of you. I know that you're both worried. I want to reassure you, if we can jump ahead to graphic 9, Democrats involved acknowledge the game they're playing. They insist, though, they only have one job: to preserve their party's slender majority, and that they're only targeting races where the extremist candidates cannot prevail. No, because what you guys don't understand is this can't fail. It's a foolproof plan being thought up by fools. Do you not get why they would be experts on such things? No, but like when someone says, hey, this is a crazy strategy, and literally everyone, as we are, points out the very high profile case in 2016 where this clearly didn't work, and it was sort of consequential when it failed. They still respond with, well, but no, you don't have to worry because this can't lose. Okay. Yeah. It's only the fate of our country. You're only gonna potentially pack congressional and senatorial races with people who would love to overturn our entire constitutional order to hand over the election to Trump. If he doesn't just win outright, which running against this Democratic Party, how could he lose?
Yeah, guys, as usual, they're not just incompetent, they're liars. One of their districts is only +4 for us. So you could easily lose a +4 district, especially in a wave like this, where the Republicans are likely to have a wave. They're playing with absolute fire, okay? And by the way, you don't need this in super safe districts. Nobody's running ads for Republicans in a +50 district for Democrats. By definition, they're running them in tighter races so they can have a more extremist candidate rather than a moderate Republican they're more likely to lose to. So they're totally, utterly lying that they're only doing it in safe seats. And then to Rayyvana's point, I mean, the New York Times gives the example of McCaskill doing it right and back in 2012. What they don't mention is that McCaskill then ran a Republican light strategy in the next election and got her ass handed to her. Lost badly. And at a time when the minimum wage was on the ballot in Missouri and won easily, crushed got 62% of the vote. If she had run as a Democrat, she would have won. Instead, she ran as a Republican, which is basically a political theory that is adjacent to this one, a corollary to this one, and she lost running as a Republican. But they never clarify that for you. They never clarify Jamie Harrison, McCaskill. All these people are losers. We're taking advice from people who have no idea how to win and who've blown giant elections before. And finally, there's one other thing you shouldn't forget about this disastrous strategy. They're punishing the Republicans who voted the right way.
Yep.
So those Republicans voted to impeach Trump, and then Pelosi and her goons decided, oh, that was a mistake. We'll now run millions of dollars in ads against you for voting against Trump.
That's a great point.
And then what are we going to do then? Then none of them are going to vote against Trump. Not because of just because of Trump's intimidation, but because of Pelosi's intimidation. Pelosi and Trump are a tag team here, saying you better never vote against Trump. Otherwise, one of us, if not both of us, are going to use it in primaries against you.
Yep.
I can't think of a worse thing to teach Republicans in Congress, a worse lesson. It's just our leadership do not believe the mainstream media. They're deeply incompetent. This iceberg is straight ahead and they're steering right into it because they're a bunch of absolute morons.
100%.
All right.
Yeah, that's unfortunately all the time we have for right now. We do have to go to our second break. When we come back though, just seemingly everyone on the right spends 24 hours a day thinking about and then attacking the transgender community, and we've got the evidence after this.
All right, back on TYT here. Let's go to Twitch first. Judicial Winter wrote in, I think this is a quote that John just said. If you admire strongmen, be one. And he said, is a fire line and want it on a shirt. Okay, so thugs at shoptyt.com put a couple of thoughts behind that. WTFOMG, it's that dragon wrote in. It's sad that the current Democratic strategy isn't look how good we are, but rather look, we're not as bad as they are. That unfortunately is the entirety of their strategy.
Yep.
The entirety. And by the way, if you're a corporate Democrat and you want to screw over your own voters to help your donors, and eventually they catch on to you, what would be the strategy you would go to if you have no soul? I'm running against a fascist, so now you have no choice and you gotta vote for me. So now if it just so happened that they got a fascist, well, that's one thing. But if they help pick a fascist to run against them, which is literally what they're doing now, and arguably what they did in 2016, well then they're deeply morally culpable.
Yep.
And that is the disgusting Democratic leadership right now. You say that on cable, you will get banned from every channel. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? That you're not allowed to say things that are true in the stupid outlets that set the national agenda. It's unbelievable. All right. Theater Goddess, AKA Verbose Dragon, wrote in the member section, Republicans are in a reverse manhood measuring contest. It's a race to see who has the smallest one so they don't offend Mr. Tiny Hands.
The in the Olympics.
Hilarious and totally true, okay? John Bogino, God, that's so sad. They're going around, no, mine is smaller, mine is smaller. Congrats, okay. John Bogino says, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the most pathetic Republican of them all? And then says, ... The mirror is stumped. Okay, can't figure that one out, that was too hard. Mr. Lumberg, AKA Initech Dragon, says, no, Lindsay, I'd much rather be respected out of admiration than fear. And I fully understand why other countries would be scared of a country that would elect him to its highest office. You don't know what they'll do next. Mostly though, they felt sorry for us. I just got to say real quick, somebody that works here, we just went on a trip to Northern Europe, came back. I was talking to her today, and she said the people in places like Sweden, Denmark, et cetera, they're scared. They're scared of what America's going to do next. Because they thought that Bush was a mistake, and they're like, boy, I can't believe they made another mistake with Trump, and that one was even worse. Now they're beginning to think, oh no, what if it's not a mistake?
Yeah.
What if that is what America is and has always been? Oh my God, America's not our friend. They're a danger to the world. And so that's what across the world is dawning on people. And by the way, once we ruin our image, it'll take decades to bring it back, decade upon decade. I mean, it's a toxic poison that we can't get out of the system. Well, let alone the fact that if Trump wins again, we don't even have a democracy, so they'd be 100% right. That is super scary, man.
Yep.
All right, we'll be back. All right, back on the power panel, Cenk, John, Rayyvana, Dragon Rat Lord, Ms. Presh 77 Dragon. They just hit the join button below on YouTube, so they're part of the show now. They're part of the Young Turks. Yeah, welcome all those amazing dragons. You could do likewise, or if you're not on YouTube, tyt.com/join. Today's a great day to do it because you could win a $100 gift card today. So God bless. John.
Okay, with that, let's jump.
They are underqualified to have children. They should have their children taken away from them because it's child abuse. It is child abuse to put a half-naked adult in the room with a small child and having them read a book. It's just child abuse. That's what it is. It's child abuse.
So that is Candace Owens just openly saying that if you bring your child to, for instance, a drag queen story hour, the government should be able to strip your children away from you. And that might cause a bit of whiplash considering that this is a party that, and a political movement that just a few months ago was saying that parents should rule all. They are the ones who determine everything for their children. How dare the government try to, for instance, teach them things or vaccinate them? Parents' rights above all. Until drag queen story hour, in which case just strip them away. And I know what you might be thinking. She's a blowhard, she's crazy. What does it matter what she thinks? Well, she represents the party. And in fact, we're gonna show you a clip from just earlier today. Donald Trump at the Faith and Freedom Coalition, what I'm terming a hate rally, effectively. Take a look at what he had to say.
Pushing woke gender ideology. Woke gender ideology. Think of it. On young people is nothing less than child abuse. No teacher should ever be allowed to teach transgender to our children without the parents' consent. And I don't think too many people are going to be giving that consent, Mark. Not too many.
So just a few years ago, he said, don't worry, LGBTQ plus community, I will be an ally to you. He literally said that. He brought out Tiffany Trump to say that. And then flash forward to today, nobody should be able to teach transgender to people. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I doubt that he knows what it's supposed to mean, but this is the movement. It should not be allowed, and in fact, if you're a parent who allows it, you might not be a parent for much longer. I wanna go to just a bit more of Candace Owens making her case.
You are seeing right now that adults are getting behind this narrative so that they can have a woke t-shirt on and say, I love my children. I allowed my child to pick their gender and pick their species. And they feel proud of themselves because they can go and they can say this on Facebook that they're a wonderful, accepting and loving adult, when in reality, they are underqualified to have children. They should have their children taken away from them because it's child abuse.
Okay, so look, as with the arguments coming out of the Uvalde mass shooting, the right does seem to understand that they are widely perceived to be and are accurately described as completely heartless. They don't care about kids. Kids are convenient tools. And they know that parents who don't want their kids to be constantly depressed, have an incredibly elevated risk of suicide, do need understanding and acceptance. And they're not interested in that. That's inconvenient to them. They've found something that can get their movement riled up, that can get crowds to go hound people at parent-teacher conferences and things like that. And if you have to strip apart a couple of families, what's the difference? They got very used to that during the Trump years. They're fine doing it to families now.
Yeah, I don't believe in playing defense. I believe in playing offense. So let me be clear. I think right-wing ideology is hateful. It teaches people, and yes, children, to hate others. One of our viewers just wrote it on Super Chat, trans rights are human rights. Well, that's by definition, right? But they don't think so. They think we should treat trans people as less than human. We should treat gay people as less than human. And they teach their children this kind of disgusting, hateful ideology. I think that's way worse child abuse than anything I've heard. I mean, you're emotionally warping those kids to have no empathy for other human beings, to be monstrous, hateful people that you're unleashing into the world. That's child abuse. I think right-wingers should have their children taken away from them. Oh, what, you don't like it? Oh, did I hurt your feelings? But when you say it about trans people, you don't mind saying it at all. Oh, that's okay for you to say, but if I say it about you, you go, oh, how dare you? What do you mean, how dare I? How dare you? So you're saying, oh, I don't like that person's ideology. I don't like that person's way of thinking. I don't like their freedom. So I like to take their kids away and abuse them and make them feel inferior and make sure that they do not have equal rights in America. No deal. You take their kids away, I'm gonna push as hard as I can in the blue states to take away kids from right-wing parents who teach them hate. That is way worse child abuse. You wanna play? Oh no, but you can't do that to us. Oh really? Why not? You do it to others and you never even think twice because you guys are monsters.
It's okay, so Candace Owens talks about half-naked drag queens, and then right after that has a picture of a child putting money in the underwear of someone who's not a drag queen. She's a burlesque dancer, a straight person, has nothing to do with drag queens, has nothing to do with queer people, has absolutely nothing to do with trans people, and she knows that. And the other conservatives who've been using that picture to fearmonger know that. That was in no way, shape, or form a drag story hour. It was a parent who irresponsibly took their child to what is essentially a strip show. And that is obviously something that people will be outraged about. So then they use that picture to lie and pretend that it was a drag story hour, because there is not an example of a real drag story hour they can show that will elicit the same reaction, because it's just not offensive. It isn't. I mean, to the point where she pretends that she cares about protecting children. How many kids have been abused at drag story hours? As far as I know, it's 0. How many kids have been abused in the churches? It's a lot more than 0. And where was Candace Owens when this investigation came out about this decades-long system of child abuse and child sexual assault in these Southern churches? What does she have to say about that? Has she ever uttered a bad word about Matt Gaetz, who allegedly trafficked an underage girl for sex? No, she hasn't, because she doesn't give a crap about protecting children. She doesn't care about protecting children. She cares about pushing a bigoted ideology and making sure that that bigoted ideology becomes policy. And there's just something so, laughable about Candace Owens condemning the big government that is pushing, this trans ideology on our kids, and then immediately in that same freaking sentence saying that the government should come take your kids away if you commit the crime of loving your trans child. She's disgusting. She is a disgusting person. The conservatives that push this bigotry are disgusting people, and they don't care about protecting kids, not one bit.
Yeah, it's a great point about the Southern Baptist churches. Well, they are viper's nest of pedophiles. So hundreds of cases. That's a undeniable fact. They acknowledge it themselves. So you send in your kids to a place that where you're openly exposing them to pedophiles, like the people who run the Southern Baptist churches. According to your way of thinking, we should start taking your kids away because you're endangering them, and it's child abuse. It's not my way of thinking, it's your way of thinking. What, it only should apply to the left, but it shouldn't apply to the right, even though you guys are 1,000 times worse? and expose your kids knowingly to pedophiles all the time, whether it's the Catholic Church, the Southern Baptist churches, or many of the other organizations you guys are involved with, including the Republican Party, we should look into child abuse charges against all these right-wingers. Yep. So, and by the way, look at how stupid they are. Candace says, the government is trying to cause mental health issues, and because the government is trying to control you. Come on, so many right-wingers believe in such a dumb conspiracy theory. You know who's trying to control our lives? Right-wingers. Oh, don't be trans, don't be gay, don't love that person, don't marry that person, don't have sex with that person, don't have sex in that way. Don't do that with your body, don't do this with your body, don't take that, don't do this. We just want to be left alone as progressives. Can you monsters please leave us alone? Oh no, you want to control us. No, it's projection, because you love power, you love it. That's how you view the government. Well, when I'm in the government, I'm gonna control everybody's life. That's how a right-winger thinks. That's how every right-winger thinks. Yeah. And so when they project that onto us, oh my God, well, when the left gets in government, they're gonna want to control our lives. We don't want anything to do with your lives. We just want you to leave us alone. You have no empathy. You guys constantly are attacking everyone else in society. You guys are toxic. I don't want anything to do with you. Nonetheless, when we're in charge, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna get you better wages and better healthcare. Yep. You schmucks.
And that's why this exists. Like, they're all transphobes, and I apologize. If you watch all of our content every day, I know that I go on about this for a long time, but there is a reason that Candace Owens now can't go one show without talking about the trans community. And that same applies for Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Charlie Kirk, all of them. I have a challenge for them. Go one day without talking about the trans community, without a representative of the community being on your show. Why weren't they ranting about this 6 months ago or 2 years ago? Now, it's not that they weren't attacking the LGBTQ community broadly or the trans community specifically. They've been, demonizing the bathroom issue and all that for some time. But it was not like 90% of their political ideology until recently. It's because it's not an actual threat and nothing has changed in that regard. They are using it. During the pandemic, hundreds of billions of dollars have been transferred from working class Americans to the richest Americans. That's what actually happened. And they desperately need to get people to not focus on that. They need something that is gonna freak regular conservatives out enough that they will elect anybody. No substance, no plan, just someone who is going to attack the community they've been trained to hate. Certainly nobody who's going to regulate businesses or increase taxes or anything like that. There was talk a couple of years ago about wealth taxes and all that. That terrified them, so they need a distraction. That's what this is. And if it leads to some people showing up to a drag queen story hour and beating the hell out of people or killing them, if it leads to regular teachers being hounded everywhere they go with constant death threats and all that, that is just a part of making the omelet of keeping conservatives so enraged and angry and scared that they will never notice that their economic lives are a ruin, that they have no chance of buying a home or retiring with dignity, no chance of their kids going to college. All of that is true. They're in worse shape than they were just a few years ago, and it certainly wasn't a holiday then. But they can't focus on that. They certainly can't prioritize that politically so long as they're terrified about this satanic panic of pedophile teachers and drag queens that control all reins of government power.
The Republican Party at this point is basically a hate group. And so if you tell me that you're a Republican, you're telling me that you joined a hate group. And you wonder why we want nothing to do with you guys. All right, we're out of time, unfortunately. All right, everybody check out Rayyvana on Rebel headquarters. Obviously, John on Damage Report. Thank you guys, we really appreciate it. We're gonna come back with another excellent power panel. And speaking of what John just talked about, this poor, brilliant African-American teacher goes down to teach in Georgia, and the new revised Klan without the hoods chase her out and then start following her around the country. These people are monsters, man. You'll see when we come back.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
that I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K-12 education. It's not even taught. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black folk and brown folk. You rather pick the voters because you're scared of the voters picking the politicians. It frightens you. But we coming. When you are in a privileged position, equality looks like oppression to you. The Karenicity runs deep in this one. We provide a mirror for reflection and a mirror for correction.
So what if I have 35? Don't hit me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
So let's put up the graphic of this Karen in peak performance. Boom. They want anarchy so they can start creating their own rules.
Can you share with me some examples?
When they were running around during the terrorist attack on January 6th saying, hang Mike Pence. So those are the people I'm talking about. That's a problem, correct? You work for Mike Pence, stand up for the guy. Do not allow the ideology of politics to evaporate the humanity that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, so I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed in this country, so I won't stop. And you won't stop either.
All right, back on TY. Wait a minute, drop it. Power panel, Cenk, Uygur, Jayar, Jackson White, Jackson squared. All right.
Jackson and Jackson, baby.
There you go. Jackson's on Rebel headquarters. Jayar, of course, hosts a watch list.
Is there a Jackson Square somewhere? That's what I heard. It sounded like you were saying Jackson Square. That's in DC, am I right?
No, I don't know. I was saying Jackson.
New Orleans. There has to be plenty of Jackson Squares.
New Orleans, maybe somewhere.
There's got to be.
We'll have to host some events in some Jackson Squares for sure.
But I was saying Jackson Squared.
Yes.
Okay. But hey, they'll take it Jackson Square. Unfortunately, there's probably some like Confederate general in Jackson Square.
All of these things are definitely named after Andrew Jackson.
Probably more of those actually. So we'll have to change the narrative.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah. All right. We got a lot of news. Actually, before that too. Real quick, there's one other person with us, Tim Forrester. Tim just joined by hitting the join button below. When you join, you're part of us, and we're trying to bring change into the world, positive change, and we appreciate you, Tim. All right, Jayar.
Let's do it. ProPublica has brought to light this story. It's a devastating story of a black educator that was getting run out of two different towns by angry white folks, as if it's 1957, because they're upset about the position that she had and it was looking to do her job. The story is extensive, you should check it out, but let's get some background first about all the things that happened to this particular woman, because her name is Cecilia Lewis. This is the job. She was asked to apply for a Georgia school district's first ever administrator job devoted to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's following input from students and parents of color. Parents of color, keep that in mind about parents that were there and what they didn't get from this. So Lewis she was a middle school principal in Maryland at the time, but then she signed on to this new position in Georgia's Cherokee County, and that's a predominantly white suburb of Atlanta. One day she got a call from an official in her new school district. This is how it went down. The caller told Lewis that a group of people in a wealthy neighborhood in the northern part of the county were upset about what they believed were her intentions to bring CRT to Cherokee County. But don't worry, the district official said, "We just want to keep you updated," is what they told her. At that point, she didn't even know what critical race theory was, this particular now potentially new administrator for this diversity group. So the following month, inside of a golf course clubhouse, dozens and dozens of parents from across the whole county, they showed up and assembled for a lesson in how to use the school board meetings to fight back against CRT. In other words, be one of these annoying, disruptive people that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, but then definitely wants to voice all kinds of opinions that Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson told them. So one presenter, a local paralegal named Noel Kahanian, leads the nonprofit Protect School Health Georgia, which aims to educate on harmful indoctrination, including comprehensive sexuality education and gender ideology. She emphasized how to grab attention during upcoming school board meetings. Be sure to capture video of them addressing the board, or even consider hiring a professional videographer. It's good in case Tucker Carlson wants to put you on air, is what she said. It really helps. Then the group focused their attention on what to do about Cecilia Lewis. They griped over the district's decision to hire her over a quote unquote, a local candidate there. After this meeting, the parents wouldn't let up. She received letters calling her a black Yankee and was falsely accused of posting Marxist ideology online. Of course, they ultimately just said, you know, we don't want you here, and we don't want you to push us to find out what will happen if you come here.
Said again, the new Klan member, Cecilia 100%. Lewis. Sorry, isn't Cecilia the teacher?
Well, Cecilia, she was probably talking about what they said to her. When they were going through it.
So that graphic she's retelling was mislabeled. Yeah. That's the hateful parent who said that, not the teacher.
So 2 days after that meeting in the clubhouse, the school board then received the first of 100 letters demanding that she be fired. So the people upset about Lewis's hiring were claiming to have spotted her around Cherokee County and were sharing with one another her supposed locations. Lewis, however, was still in Maryland. And on that same day, following an increase in social media posts, emails, and phone calls complaining about Lewis and CRT, the district installed metal detectors and assigned extra security at the county building where school board meetings are to be held. So it sounds like some violence is coming, sounds like some angry things are happening, all because a new position was put forward and a bunch of folks were lied to and are now moving towards violence. So the school board meeting, which Lewis was watching online, it was overrun with angry parents. And without warning Lewis, the same superintendent who hired, without warning her, the same superintendent who hired her announced that she would be canceling the diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. And then one black woman spoke in favor of the decision to hire Lewis. That's when the crowd gathering outside began beating against the building's windows and yelling. Watch this. So of course the school board caved. They voted 4-1 with 2 abstentions to pass an anti-CRT and anti-1619 project resolution, but the crowd was still riled up. Of course, that's not what they wanted blood. One man in the crowd screamed, "I'm furious," and another declared, "We're gonna hunt you down." Students were crying at it. That had to be taken out because they didn't know what was going on. They definitely knew some violence was about to happen though. The administrators then asked Lewis if she would consider a different position in Cherokee, but she turned them down after all the vitriol and the threats that she'd received. This is just half of the story, you guys, because as I said, she got run out of multiple counties. Let's first talk about this first instance because they're going after, we want to stop this CRT because there's a diversity board that's been put forward, which apparently this county really, really needs.
Yeah, so let's just be honest about who those folks are. All the parents you saw in that video are the new Ku Klux Klan. So she doesn't even know what CRT is, let alone plan to teach it. When they asked her, she thought it was about cultural relativity or something along those lines. And so they're like, "Oh, we don't care, you're black. We don't want you here, you're black. We assume you're gonna teach certain things because you're black. You tell me you're not gonna teach it, I don't care, you're black." So all these racist Klan members right there get together like, "Don't hire the black person, don't hire the black person." I mean, how are you not the world's worst racist? You monsters. "Oh no, I don't want my kids being taught that maybe black people were discriminated against, okay? I don't want it. I don't want a black teacher teaching them." Okay, if you don't want a black teacher teaching your kids, you are the definition of a racist. Let alone when you say things like, "We're gonna hunt you down." We're gonna hunt you down? That's exactly what the Klan said. She made the mortal mistake of going down to the South as a black person. And look at them, they're all egged on by Tucker Carlson. "Oh, we gotta get this on tape for our Klan leader. The Grand Wizard's gonna be so happy." And probably Jimmy Dore and Glenn Greenwald will come on and go, "Oh yeah, no, they're right, they shouldn't hire any black people." That's what the left believes, yeah, Okay, so we got a bunch of disgusting pigs on Tucker Carlson's show that is pushing out this poison into America every day. And then you get all these riled up Klan members going, "Oh, the black teacher, we're gonna hunt you down, black teacher." Okay, you guys are disgusting racists. I'm very clear, Jackson.
So, obviously we know that this is the end result of continuous propaganda, not only from networks like Fox News, but also we know the type of, positions that Ron DeSantis has, how he revoked dozens of math books for supposed critical race theory examples, but also, one of the things that the article from ProPublica pointed out was really demonstrating how together the right wing is and how really they come together through fear so strongly. In fact, since January of 2021, legislators in 40 states have proposed or passed anti-critical race theory bills. 14 public school employees have been ran out, 6 of them were black, and also 900 school districts have been targeted by anti-critical race theory groups from September 20th to August 2021. So again, all of this constant grandstanding and constant positioning leads to, as Cenk just pointed out, the continued rise in just the bubbling racism and overall fear that ultimately brings the right wing together. And I wanted to point out one of the most important quotes to really just drive this home. One of the letters that one of the parents sent to Cecilia Lewis, or to the school board rather, about Cecilia Lewis, she pointed out how the white population was so much bigger than blacks and Latinos. And she said, "Are we now in a country that's going to cater only to a handful of people?" Bingo, that's all this is about. They're afraid of the establishment levers changing. And again, the constant propaganda is only just making this more and more of a hot issue that's gonna get worse.
There's a couple of comparisons here. When you saw that crowd trying to beat on the walls and you see it in color, harken you back to desegregation in America when you saw all those mothers, fathers, teenagers, and children running up on black folks that were then forced to go to some of these schools that were desegregated, and they said the same things. "We're coming to get you, we're gonna hunt you down, the sun better not go down on your ass." Because that's the way these people work. It's no different than that. All it is now, it's in color. So the other second half of this, you guys, because she was also hired later on, and she left this particular position, and she was hired for a social studies supervisor role in another school in the county, that over from Cherokee County, a different whole different school here. So the same angry parents got wind of this hiring and then came over and said that they're gonna do something about that. And Cecilia was appalled. So she said, I did nothing but showed up to work, signed a contract, agreed to do what I was asked to do on the job description, and yet again, I'm getting attacked. So this particular school district gave her menial tasks, wouldn't allow her to send emails, was just basically holding her there like maybe this will blow over, who knows what their plan was. But just after a few months, she submitted her resignation there because of the harassment and she moved on back to Maryland. She says, I'm done with these folks. The parent group that had rid her of these 2 counties bragged about it as an accomplishment and used it as a rallying call to even more parents. So let's build up this hatred. And somehow Cecilia is still optimistic about the future and when it comes to teachers. Let's watch her last thoughts.
This is a heart business. This is a hard business, but it's so worth it. And I just hope that educators around the world who are being attacked and not questioned, it's okay to question, right? Lead with the question, but know that you're valued and the impact, the difference that we're making, no one can take that away from us. They can yell at all they want. They can accuse you of whatever, as long as you are standing upright in best practice and what's best for kids, we're gonna be okay.
And this is what throws me even more than all this. After all that, she has to be the one to be the bigger person and say, you know what, it's gonna be okay. Things are working out. It's not a heart, but it's a heart business. And all of this goes into then being the better person. But I guarantee they'll still say, look at these rabid, racist, reverse racist black folks trying to do something to our country. The bloodthirst and the blood dripping from their teeth just doesn't change that. But they'll continue to try and change that narrative.
Yeah. And now, I'm gonna remind you guys that the right wing says the biggest problem in the country is what? Cancel culture. They just got her fired from 2 different, for the first job, and then they chased her out of town on the second job. Why? Because she was black. That's the only reason. She doesn't teach critical race theory. Her job has nothing to do with that, especially at the second school. In the first school, the administrators are at fault for not realizing that they live in a town filled with Klansmen. So they were trying to do the right thing and do diversity as part of the curriculum. Oh, like, hey, there's other people in the world. There's black people, there's Asian people. You're gonna run into them at some point. And you know what? You shouldn't just attack them because of the color of their skin. And the town said, no, we wanna teach our kids to be racist. So we'll lead by example. You know where they got together the first time? Golf course. So the new Klan doesn't have hoods, and it gets together at golf courses, and they showed their kids through their example of their own racism and hatred. If you see someone black, attack them and try to ruin their lives. So it's disgusting on every level. They love cancel culture, and the Klan loved cancel culture too. That's what lynchings were. We want to talk about cancel culture, okay? The right wing started all of it, all of it. Every single thing that they ever accused the left of, guaranteed they did it in spades. Oh, minorities are lazy, they don't even want to do their own work. Said the guys who had slaves to do their work for them. The world's laziest, most hateful people. That's who the South was, and we were gonna just teach history and say, but hey, things got better and it's wonderful, and look at Atlanta, etc. And it's the capital of so many things. Nope. Turns out, that's how the South still is in a lot of places. And I would never live there. And they'll say, oh, we don't want you. I know, because you say, oh, you were born Muslim, look at him, he's brown. We don't want you anyway. We don't like foreigners. I know this because you're racist. And I don't want my kids exposed to poison that the new Klan spreads all across the country. And thank you, Tucker and Donald Trump, for poisoning half the country to be vicious, open racist again.
Yeah, and of course, just the education about what this country's been through, what people are capable of doing to each other, and how we can learn from it. That in and of itself, that's the racism. But the irony in it all is, when these people, again, how organized and together they are, but it's all on the backs of ignorance. Because they truly do believe that critical race theory is some type of propaganda against them. It's gonna make their kids think less of themselves in some type of way. But they actually do believe it, they unite under it, they vote under it. And as you pointed out, not only do they try to get people canceled, but they also do it with the threats of violence that they carry out. So that's what we're dealing with.
One last thought really fast. They say black folks need to get a job, take care of your families. How come they don't do anything? And then you run people out of their jobs. Black folks are so violent. We're gonna hunt you down. The reality doesn't have to match the rhetoric. As long as they got enough idiots that follow it and are hateful enough, they will sell their souls because the racism is that important. Keep it real. Let's take a break, you guys. Cenk's gonna read a few of y'all comments when we come back. Tulsi Gabbard ran into a bit of a buzzsaw. Maybe it's a bit of herself, because after trying to appeal to Sean Hannity, he finally said, wait, maybe she's using me. I think that's what happened. We're gonna do that story. It's a bit of a clash on his show when we come back.
All right, guys, don't forget today is the day we give away 200 gift cards that are worth $100. $100 in free food from Blue Apron. It's real, it's not a gimmick. No, you don't have to put your credit card info in. You just have to be a member, and I'll play the trivia game today in the bonus episode. That's for the members, okay? So if you join through YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, make sure you go to tyt.com/food. Check that out for 1 minute. Make sure that you're following the right steps. And then boom, play tonight. Just ask around to the other members. Tons and tons of people have won it. They write in every day with like, oh my God, it's just free $100. Okay, so membership pays for itself. tyt.com/join. Definitely get in today. Okay, and by the way, make sure you're checking out Watch List. That's Jayar's show, 9 o'clock Pacific, noon Eastern. YouTube.com/watchlisttyt. Also Facebook.com/watchlisttyt. And then as we've been telling you guys, if you see the indisputable billboard in your town, take a picture of it, send it to us, put it on Twitter. Just do a hashtag indisputable so we can spot it, okay? Just a hashtag indisputable. So it's pretty neat. It's in a bunch of towns across the country, and more is coming. All right, Rep Cat, the Politica Cat Boy writes in. Okay, that's a tough name, brother. This is horrible, and what sucks is that it's just the beginning. Things are just going to get worse and worse, especially if the corporate Dems don't get their heads out of their asses. Well, there's no chance of that happening. So it's only going to get worse and worse. Lynn asks, since the Republicans shout all lives matter, doesn't that include the trans community? No, of course not. They don't mean any of it. They just mean white lives matter. You think they're going to go around chanting Muslim lives matter, Muslim lives matter? No, they hate the idea of the rest of us. My Ass's Dragon says, more so than power, the cruelty is the point. And that's about Republicans, and that's definitely true. A Dent Hitchhiking Dragon puts in an uncomfortable comment in Twitch. It's Cenk in a Jackson sandwich. We move forward. Phil Jones writes in, Cherokee, just like Forsyth, is one of the most racist counties in Georgia. Oprah did a special on Forsyth because of it. Well, you don't have to convince us. That video told you all you need to see. Lars Nilsson wrote in, a friend who is trans started listening to Dave Rubin, and through his show, also Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens. Now his self-hatred has made him isolated from his loved ones, and I'm afraid of having lost him for good to the right-wing propaganda. They did that to someone who's trans.
I don't know how.
That's amazing. Look at how propaganda works. That's why right-wing billionaires fund those guys to the tune of billions of dollars, millions overall. All right, we'll be back. TYT, Cenk, Jayar, and Jackson with you guys. Also, Jamie White and Praveen Singh. Thank you for joining us, Jamie and Praveen. So great to have you guys here. Great day for it. $100 gift cards are being given away tonight, 200 of them. So hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube, and everybody else, tyt.com/join. We play every Friday. All right, yeah.
Let's jump into this.
I would like America to go back to the Trump policies and secure our border. I would like to go back to the policies that America is energy independent and stop sucking up to Iran, Venezuela, OPEC, and Saudi Arabia. I would like lower taxes, not higher taxes, less bureaucracy, not more bureaucracy. Now, you're a Democrat, Tulsi. Do you disagree with any of my plans? What things I'd like to do?
We should have a conversation about each of those things, Sean. We probably agree on some, disagree on others. But
should we? All right, here's one. Should we enforce the laws at the border?
Oh, no. There's Tulsi Gabbard showed up on Sean Hannity's show last night and didn't, maybe she did, but didn't realize apparently from that she was gonna have to talk about some actual policy things and not just go out there and bloviate and try and get more and more on his good side. So the clips again happened yesterday, and he grilled on more than just that issue, as she already saw that coming. He saw that nervous laugh. There's more. He asked her about immigration too. Let's go.
Should we enforce the laws at the border? Let's go through them one by one.
Of course.
Okay, so we shouldn't have open borders. We should go back to the Trump policies. You'd be okay with that?
I've been very vocal about that open borders are a threat to our own homeland security. And with open borders, we don't really have a country.
Go back to that good old, same old line from Donald Trump. What do you think, Cenk?
Yeah, okay, so I think Hannity's being a dumbass here. He's accidentally ruining her plausible deniability. So the way that this game is played on Fox News is you bring on someone who used to be in the left wing, like Tulsi Gabbard or Glenn Greenwald or Jimmy Dore, and then they act as the patsy. And their job is to, whatever the topic is, and you'll see it 100% of the time, Tucker or Sean Hannity says something and they go, oh yeah, the left wing agrees with you. Oh yeah, totally, man. I'll tell you, all the reasonable people in the left wing think the right wing is so right, Tucker. Way to be, Sean. Okay, so that's their job. That's what they get paid for, okay? But Sean, like Tucker Carlson invented that game, okay? Actually, Roger Ailes invented it, Tucker Carlson perfected it. But Sean Hannity's too dumb and he doesn't know. So he's like, all right, let me go one by one and prove that you're actually a Republican. And Tulsi's like, no, I'll never get my paycheck. And other Republicans uninteresting. Me pretending to be a Democrat, agreeing with all of your Republican points. That's why I'm on here. So that's why she's like, no, don't, Sean. She's like, she almost can't believe how dumb he's being. Like, don't you remember the thing we agreed to? Okay, but so she's not allowed to disagree with him. That's why he's like, there aren't open borders. What open borders? We don't. It's not a thing. That's a thing Republicans made up. You can argue with our immigration laws, but there is no law that says open borders, everybody run across. That's not true. There's no such thing, right? But she's like, oh yeah, there it is. And then she repeated verbatim to Jayar's point, Trump's line, then we don't have a country, okay? Now, the problem is if you go one by one, as we're about to show you, then you realize, wait, she isn't a Democrat. She's just a right winger. So then why is she even on? So that's what Hannity screwed up. That's why Tulsi had that great awkward laughter of, ha ha.
Maybe he's tired of her. That's my theory, at least. Let's jump really fast. Yeah, Jackson, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that was, Sheikh, you pointed it out perfectly, because now he's created tension between both himself and her and the audience, because she really just looked unprepared and he made her look disingenuous. So yeah, I agree with you totally. He really put her in a bad position to keep doing what she's doing.
I think he meant it. I think something angered him. Let's go more, because inflation, gas prices, and also drill baby drill. That was the next topic.
Okay, now we have a 41-year high of inflation and record high gas prices. Now, we can finish the Keystone XL pipeline very quickly, and every day we'll get 900,000 barrels of Canadian oil right into the United States. Would you go forward with that? And would you lift the restrictions that Joe Biden put on ANWR and federal land leases for fracking and oil? Would you join me in that effort?
I would look forward. I'd look forward to a plan that ensures our energy security in a way that serves the interest of the American people and is done so responsibly.
Yeah, you're kind of ducking a little bit. I'm asking very specifically. Keystone Pipeline, you're in favor of?
Whether it's the Keystone Pipeline or other resources that we have available here in our country,
you would support opening
energy
ANWR?
security and done so in a way that's responsible and not contaminating water as some of the fracking has done in certain parts.
This is slightly a downgrade from what Tucker Carlson did to Ted Cruz. He's like, I'm gonna make you talk, because they never really make them talk because they don't want to expose them. He wants to expose her because he doubled down and went further. He said, what are you gonna do about it? Challenge directly to Joe Biden. Even more so, again, he's trying to keep her as posing as this Democrat that's talking more.
Would you remove the restrictions and regulations that Joe Biden put on the energy sector? And that means allowing more leases to be given to oil and gas companies on federal lands. That would finish the Keystone XL pipeline, reopen ANWR, and allow these companies to do what they do best, and that's produce the lifeblood of the world's economy. Would you support me in that effort?
I support you and agree with you in energy security. I don't know specifically chapter and verse all the regulations and restrictions that Joe Biden has put in place, but I can say broadly he has put restrictions in place that have inhibited our ability to be able to provide the energy that the American people need, especially during this critical time.
Just trying. She's really trying.
Yeah. Well, Sean, as luck would have it, I agree with you again. Okay, you know, you're not going to make any left-wing points, any just factual points. If you do the drilling permits right now, it takes years for them to start drilling, let alone drill, get the oil out. The tiny amount of oil they get out from the ones that they want the permits for have almost no chance of affecting the global price. At best case scenario, 5 years from now. You don't know any of that? You're a left-winger, you're a Democrat, you don't know that? You don't know that they have drilling permits that they're not using at all right now? And that giving them more actually winds up driving up the prices? You don't know, as TYT wrote about, that it's actually the bankers' loophole that's creating 25% of extra inflation on the gas price? You can't make a single left-wing defense. And the reason why she didn't want to say Keystone and ANWR, and I'm curious, Jayar, what your theory on Hannity is because remember, later she might be used again by the right wing when she's got to earn her paycheck, right? Like she might run in a primary pretending to be a Democrat and just put out right-wing talking point after right-wing talking point and attack whoever the leading Democrat is on behalf of Republicans. And if you say, I'm for drilling in ANWR, nobody's gonna believe you're a Democrat. So Hannity's totally blowing this. So I don't know if it's a rivalry between him and Tucker, and he's like, forget it, I'm just gonna show she's a Republican, right? I don't know what he's doing. What's your guess?
I don't know. I think there's some behind the scenes that happened that he just kind of doesn't want to run anymore. It's just this weird thing. I'm trying to figure out where he's trying to come with this takedown, because not many anchors or even journalists, reporters will ask someone, and then when they don't answer the question, a politician, they won't then say, you didn't answer the question. It happens like 5% of the time, and when they do, they're done. They're done with this person. She said something in the green room and he overheard her or something. He's just like, Handy has an ugly tie today.
Because he framed it in a way to make it seem like it was like his first or second time interviewing her, and every time they do, they clash. That's the way it looked. And it also just highlighted how easy that right-wing media grift really is, because they don't get challenged. And once you really get into that seat, all you have to do is blurt out talking points or be completely black and white. But he just made her look like she doesn't know what she's talking about and like she's totally unprepared because she got comfortable, which goes to show that she's doing absolutely nothing with her job but collecting easy checks. So
we got one more clip, but I just want to look, this is perfect example of they're not allowed to disagree. I mean, so when when like the Greenwalds of the world do this sleight of hand where they imply that we don't criticize the Democratic Party and we're biased. Have you ever watched a minute of the Young Turks? I mean, we probably criticize the Democratic Party more than any other show, period. period, including the right wing, because we criticize them from the left. From a progressive perspective, we actually want them to do things. No, the sleight of hand is that those fake left people like Tulsi Gabbard never criticize Republicans. They're like, oh, we're principled, we criticize our own party. Okay, that's totally fine, that's good, that is principled. As long as you're also criticizing the other party, the one you're not in, you criticize both, that's principled. Like, no, we only criticize our own party, the other party is heavenly. I agree, Anwar, Keystone, open borders, whatever you got, Sean, I agree, where's the check? Where's the check, right? So no, they never, ever, ever criticize Republicans. Oh, so Hannity's going to give her one more chance to prove that she's a Democrat. Let's see what happens.
I want your thoughts on the rush to cling to this potential decision in the Supreme Court that would overrule Roe v. Wade. Number one, Joe Biden supported a constitutional amendment to get rid of it. Interesting, he's not been asked the question. Ruth Bader Ginsburg pretty much saying and arguing what I had said all my career, which I thought it was bad law. It'll be returned to the states. Abortion is not going to be unavailable or illegal in America, so they're demagoguing that issue. I'm arguing the reason they're doing it is because they don't have anything else that they can run on and say, hey, we did this, this, and this, and we're all better off because of it. Am I wrong?
Well, I think when you look at the different efforts to assault our freedom and democracy, it continuously points to the fact that they're afraid of the people. They're afraid of us. They're afraid of this question being put to the people through their state legislatures, for the people's voices to be heard.
So that was on another instance. In this instance, 4 different times, she's like, oh, you're right, Sean. The Republicans are right about everything. And we showed you that one because Roe v. Wade, she's still pretending to be pro-choice. And she goes on, oh, you are right, Sean. Oh, Roe v. Wade, terrible, Sean. Of course not, Sean. Of course, that's people, by the way, the plausible deniability. She would later say, no, I just thought it was the wrong decision and I'm actually pro-choice, blah, blah, blah. But hey, go on Sean's show one more time. He'll probably expose you on that too. He'll be like, okay, now to say, yes, you hate Roe, good job, good job. Now though, to get your check, you now have to be pro-life. She's like, yes, I am pro-life. I am a Democrat who agrees with every Republican position. I also might mainly agree with the check that I have received. Okay, Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat my ass.
Well, we'll see if she comes back and tries to extend her principled stances even further. Let's jump to this next story. We have a little bit of time for that. The House Select Committee wrapped up its 3rd day of evidence producing what happened on January 6th and Trump's potential involvement in that insurrection. Specifically how after Mike Pence finally stood up to him, he decided to direct his foot soldiers in ire and his anger directly at his vice president. Here's a bit of what they showed that day.
Did John Eastman ever admit, or in front of the president, that his proposal would violate the Electoral Count
Act? I believe he did on the 4th.
That was January 4th, 2 days before the attack on Congress.
And Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I will tell you right now.
I'm telling you what, I'm hearing the Pence just caved. No. Is that true? I didn't. I'm hearing reports that Pence caved. No. I'm telling you, if Pence caved, we're gonna drag through the streets. You politicians are gonna get drugged through the streets. Yeah.
I guess the hope is that there's such a show of force here that Pence will decide to do the right thing, according to Trump.
Bring it out! Bring it out! Bring out Pence! Bring him out! Bring out Pence! Bring it out! Bring out Pence!
The evidence was pretty damning. In fact, it was so damning that Donald Trump decided to take to Truth Social to try and dispel it some more. He says this: the fake news networks are perpetuating lies, falsehoods, and Russia type disinformation. Same sick people, here we go again. By allowing the low-rated but nevertheless one-sided and slanderous unselect committee hearings go endlessly and aimlessly on and on and on. It's a one-sided, highly partisan witch hunt the likes of which has never been seen in Congress before. Therefore, I'm hereby demanding equal time to spell out the massive voter fraud and DEMS security breach. He followed that up with one more repetitive truth here, and it says, I demand equal time. Calm down, bro. Calm down, kid. So anyway, by the way, this isn't the first time he's gotten mad about the select committee's evidence that they've been showing. After the second day, he went and put forth this 12-page tirade, and the former president repeated a number of long dismissed conspiracy theories regarding the results of the last election, as well as the more recent ones regarding harvested and stuffed ballots, discussed in Dinesh D'Souza's documentary 2000 Mules. Yeah, also this though, he says also this, the unselect pseudo committee has coordinated with their media puppets to broadcast their witnesses on national television without any opposition, cross-examination, or rebuttal evidence. He's very upset about this entire thing. I want to go to the equal time stuff, but first let's go to this, your reactions to this.
Okay, so let's get a couple of things right here. First of all, this is great news. Why? Because you can have equal time if you testify. Problem solved. In fact, it'll be in the same exact forum, same exact channels, and you'll get to be the star. In fact, I bet they give you just as much time as all of the other witnesses combined. You demanded equal time, you got it, genius. Genius move, Donald. Come on up to the Congress. Oh, what, you don't want to? Then what are you crying about? Like a child. I mean, we're all bold. I demand equal time from who? You yell into the abyss. Equal time from who? They're doing congressional hearings. You can have equal time all you want if you go to the congressional hearings. I don't want to go to the congressional hearings. I demand equal time from the Easter Bunny. What are you talking about, man? What lunatic ravings are you doing now? So I guess he means in his crazy mind that the TV stations are just gonna randomly go, all right, now to give equal time. By the way, you're stuck in the 1970s, man. Every stereotype, right? Like when he goes to the racist stuff, he's like, oh, Puerto Ricans, they're lazy. You're like, oh, Jesus Christ, right? Oh, he's in a room with Jewish Republicans. He's like, no room likes to renegotiate more than you guys. Like it's every one of these, right? And so, on this stuff, he thinks that there's still the old law that Reagan got rid of in 1980s, where you had to give equal time to each candidate. There's no such law, man. The Republicans, by the way, hate that law. That's what allowed, once they got rid of that, they got Rush Limbaugh on talk radio and Fox News, etc. right? That law doesn't even exist. So, but he's like, oh, I demand that all the TV stations give me all their time. Under what capitalist theory is that? Like, where do you get, like, you guys believe in capitalism and you're gonna, what, appropriate the airwaves from these private corporations? What are you talking about, you moron? But my favorite part, I am hereby demanding equal time to spell out the massive voter fraud, etc. The hereby, as if that makes it official. Look, I hereby demand it. Oh, I didn't know that, dog. It changes everything. First of all, you're not the president anymore. Second of all, just saying the word hereby doesn't make it any more official, okay? But I bet you he thinks that, no, I said hereby. I hereby demand it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and also as you pointed out, not only does he have the opportunity to testify, but leading up to this, he lost 60 court cases where he had the opportunity to prove that there was some type of voter fraud going on. And dozens of times he lost those cases. He started several social media platforms, one of which he went on this raid on. And he's still one of the most popular figures in the Republican Party, still the most likely to win the nomination if he doesn't go to jail, which no one's holding their breath about. So it's like this guy, he's so stupid, it's like difficult to believe. Hereby, now it's official because he uses hereby, but it's like, dude, you've had all the opportunity in the world to have equal time and you've lost at every corner.
So Trump is upset about what was going on in those hearings. Let's jump to SOT 3, you guys, because Rudy Giuliani had to answer a couple questions about what he has been exposed to have been doing during these hearings. He was asked about it and he had no interest in answering. Watch.
Eric Hirschman just testified before the January 6th committee that you told him that Pence did not have the authority to block certification of the election. Is that true?
I shouldn't really talk about that.
But did you
set
tell
of
Eric
rules that I
Hirschman?
had with the committee was that my answering question would be confidential. Now, the committee leaks because the committee is an irresponsible...
Well, this was Eric Hirschman saying this.
Well, Eric can do what he wants, but the reality is I do not comment on the testimony I gave to them, except to say...
Well, I'm asking you about his testimony.
Well, I'm not going to comment on his testimony. I'm going to tell you that the committee is a witch hunt.
So are you accusing Eric Hirschman of lying under oath?
I'm not accusing Eric Hirschman of anything. I'm not commenting on Eric Hirschman. I am talking about the committee.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, they're transmogrifying into actual villains. He looks like the Penguin. Like he looks just like the Penguin. It's amazing, right? And here we were thinking that that Republicans were against trans. They're just transitioning to something else completely, like villains out of comic books. It totally does. I don't want to talk about Eric Hirschman. I want to talk about Russia. Okay, by the way, later in that press conference, he talked about Russia. And Trump said the same thing. What are they doing? These hearings have nothing to do with Russia. Nothing, zero. Russia's never been brought up. But you know what? If they keep repeating it, soon there'll be a poll out that says 25% of Republicans think that the hearings are about Russia.
100%.
Then they'll do another poll and 59% of Republicans will think it's about Russia. And by the end, 75% of Republicans will think that the hearings are about Russia when the word Russia has never been said in the hearings.
Yep, 100%, and that's exactly why they're doing it. But the funniest thing about this whole thing is it's like throughout this whole tenure, their narrative is that they're 100% victims at every single point, as if thousands of people storming the Capitol and all the evidence of people's involvement. It's just a normal Tuesday, like that happens all the time. What are we even talking about? But definitely, I think that there's blood in the water for sure in terms of people are going to be, I think at least more openly willing to primary Trump in 2024, because I think that these hearings are really just, not like everything else he's ever done doesn't make him look bad. But I think as we get closer to 2024, there's a good chance that other people are going to jump in.
Well, no, other people will jump in. You're right about that, Jackson. But man, I have no idea what's going to happen in the Republican primaries in 2024. Trump could easily win, or maybe somebody like DeSantis takes him out. But no one should take for granted that he is not going to win, because the Republican Party, the voters themselves, don't mind anything. They don't mind lies. They don't mind the riot. In fact, what is it? Another poll came out, 59% saying that of Republicans saying that Trump did absolutely nothing wrong on January 6th, not a single thing. So. You sure they won't make him the nominee again? I'm not at all sure. And are you sure that the Republican voters minded the riot or the coup attempt? I don't think they minded it at all. So God help us. All right, we got to take a break. Yeah. After we come back, we got at least one more important story for you guys. Come right back. All right, back on TYT. All right, let me just jump around here a little bit. Twitch, Wino writes in, this is what happens when you get bought out by the Republicans. You give them the power, and Tulsi is a false representative of the Democratic Party, makes us all look even weaker. That's right. As if Pelosi and Biden weren't doing a good enough job of making us look pathetically weak, and Schumer too. Now here comes Tulsi pretending to be a Democrat and going, yeah, you're right about everything, you're right, Republicans. Shikata Ganai writes in, you are witnessing a traitorous mob assembled to commit treason and acts of mass murder of government officials. We don't need to investigate, we need to prosecute. No, I think we need both. And I think these hearings are good. I don't know if they're going to move a single Republican voter. I don't. And I think they might move some Republican politicians who are like, are we really signing up for ending democracy? Is that what we're signing up for? And a couple of them are uneasy about that. There's some that are secretly uneasy about it. And it appears that the overwhelming majority are like, yeah, sure, why not? But if Merrick Garland doesn't have the balls to prosecute, he's going to be one of the worst attorney generals in American history. If he lets all the elites go, Navarro, Bannon, Trump, that actually planned the coup, Eastman, he just lets them all go, then he's the weakest man we've ever had in government and will have doomed this country. The only upside will be, well, I'm glad he's not on the Supreme Court.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, and by the way, look at who Obama picked. You know why he picked Merrick Garland? Because he wanted to appease the Republicans. How'd that turn out, Barack? How did it turn out? Did you learn any lesson? No. All you did after that, since Obama's retired, all he's ever done is attack progressives. He attacked Keith Ellison to make sure that he didn't win the chairmanship of the DNC. He attacked Bernie during the primaries. So, oh, no, I don't get involved. I don't get, unless it's really important and a progressive's about to win, in which case I'll kneecap him. Okay, name me the last time Barack Obama kneecapped a Republican. I'll tell you, Mitt Romney in 2012, because Mitt Romney was running against him. So the most important thing in the world of Barack Obama was on the line, Barack Obama. But if it's you guys, he'll never help you. In fact, if you're a progressive, he'll hurt you. My job is to be honest with you guys. I do declare his mission accomplished on the border policy for Biden. He kept the same policy as Trump and deported even more people than Trump. And how did that work out for you, Joe? How did that work out for you? You try to appease Republicans. Do they look appeased? No, but Joe Biden is just painfully stupid. He's like, the fever's gonna break. Fever's gonna break. I'll have no support on the left and no support on the right. That's a good strategy, right? No, you schmuck, it's a terrible strategy. TYT, Cenk, Jayar, and Jackson with you guys. Jayar.
Let's do it. Jay-Z, hip hop artist, he has a history of giving back to the Marcy Homes. That was the housing development in New York where he grew up. He's mentioned many times. But this year, he's launching a different kind of initiative towards helping out the groups of folks that are there. It's called Bitcoin Academy for the residents of Marcy Homes. And the response is a little bit back and forth. Here's some details of this initiative he's working on. This program aims to provide education, empower the community with knowledge, and get rid of some of the barriers so that residents can learn more about Bitcoin specifically and finance in general. He collaborated with Twitter founder Jack Dorsey on this project as well. And it's a 12-week Bitcoin Academy course which will be taught by Lamar Wilson. He runs the website Black Bitcoin Billionaire. And Anaja J. Roberts, founder and CEO of Brick and Mortar Crypto School in California, and that's called Crypto Blockchain Plug. Bitcoins everywhere. There's at least one good perk of Bitcoin Academy though. There's some free phones. Those participating in the program will receive MiFi devices and a 1-year limited data plan, plus smartphones if needed. Residents may keep the devices, very nice. Nonetheless, many of these people that are living in these homes aren't really very happy about this or thinking this is the best approach. It's kind of late to be doing that when people are trying to hold on to their dollars and everything is so expensive. People don't want to be investing money knowing that they might have a chance of losing it. So one resident did also say. In addition, every time I got to go to rent, phone, TV, and internet, I don't have money like that to be losing. If I did, I would try to invest in something that's more reliable, like the basketball game last night.
Who doesn't love Myra?
You know I'm gonna win something from that. Also, if you want to do something, fix this place up. We have a basketball court with no hoops. Our parks is broken up in here. We should be doing more for this community, not no Bitcoin academy. So it's not a surprise that they're not very happy about this. With the Bitcoin push, when they're struggling to survive in this expensive city of New York, the average household income for public housing residents in New York is over $24,000, according to the New York Housing Authority. And there's one person that is excited about this, and they said, I would like to learn how they became a millionaire and learn what to trade and what not to trade. So there's a bit of folks that are looking forward to this. Is this worthwhile? Is this something that's gonna help out?
First, before we do anything else, we're just gonna let it go. We're not gonna let it go. Did you hear Jayar's Freudian slip? Bitcoin? I said it early.
I don't know what you're talking
about. Well, look, I got 99 problems, but Bitcoin ain't one. So in this case, I'm a little bit more open to this than other people are. You might be surprised by that. We even have a poll on it, and I'm super curious what you guys think. Because look, in a sense, there it is. Are you in favor of Jay-Z's Bitcoin Academy, yes or no? So let me make the case for yes real quick. He's trying to do something to uplift folks. They need money, right? So it's classes on handling your own finances, right? And so I like that he's going back into the community and he's trying to teach them how to fish. Now, don't get me wrong, I get the no side completely. I mean, if you're gonna teach folks how to fish, I'll quote the legendary Jayar Jackson. We ain't got no boots, we ain't got no bootstraps, and you're telling us to pull ourselves up by the Bitcoin straps. We don't have any, right? And second of all, I mean, of all the ways to learn financial literacy, Bitcoin? So I think he's trying to do the right thing and everybody's crapping on him, but it doesn't seem like the best way to do it, to say the least. Jackson, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that throughout Jay-Z's career, he has done a lot of good things, and they pointed out some of the things that he's done in the community around holidays and things like that. I think inherently, the plan to help educate people on financial literacy in some type of way, there's nothing wrong with it. However, I think that this initiative will be better placed elsewhere, such as like public school projects to help kids get started at a younger age, but not just with Bitcoin, but like how to navigate the tax system, how to save money, how to budget, things like that. That will be more useful in a more broad perspective to where like kids in that whole district could get some of that in a public school setting. So stuff like that, I think, will go further publicly. But I mean, I'm sure that this was done in good faith, and he'll continue to, try other ventures just like it.
Yeah, hopefully the criticism will have them insert other things like, hey, maybe there's certain careers that people make a certain amount of money in. Gear people towards those types of studies,
Yeah, the one thing we'd all definitely agree on is if it turns into like some sort of scam where they're trying to get people to put money into their Bitcoin venture, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah. Just please, like Jackson's right, just teach financial literacy, but actual financial literacy about every part of finance, not just Bitcoin. And that actually would be really helpful, and that would be a good way to put back into the community. Okay. For the members, we have a bonus episode for you guys, including a hilarious story of Mike Lindell, the MyPillow guy, going to war with Walmart. He just found out what capitalism is, and he's super pissed. It's hilarious. TYT.com/join, or if you're on YouTube, hit the join button below. We'll see you there.
Old school's pitched to me from Cenk. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong, I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? What makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more.